Okay, we're streaming.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Madden. We are now proceeding to the part of our board agenda where we're talking about it's a professional development conversation, mostly because I wasn't entirely sure what else to call it. But we will be talking about professional development, and we will be having a conversation as we eat our lunches um, to discuss communication, collaboration, and how we are going to work together. We have new leadership with interim superintendent Larry Madden and business administrator Alan Kersley, and then we've got the board members here as well. So welcome, and then welcome to everybody who's participating via Facebook Live and listening to us. We welcome you. Thanks for joining us for lunch. And acknowledge that this is a working lunch for board members. So we will be eating as well. What I wanted to do is start by talking about how we would like to move forward as a board with professional development. We've talked about it off and on over the last few months about perhaps bringing in a facilitator to talk to us about some professional development. And I'd like the purpose of this discussion would be for us to have a plan, kind of an outline of what we'd like to do, so that Nate and I know how to plan moving forward, and we're following the board's guidance for that. But to start our conversation today, I'd like us to look at our board mission statement and vision statement, and then our board handbook as well, and just kind of see if these documents are still, well, the mission statement and vision statement, make sure that these are still where we want to be. A lot of effort and work has gone into these statements. I think it's good just for us to review them so that we can just put ourselves on the same page. So as you know, our vision statement for the district is excellence and equity, every student, every classroom, every day. And that is what is our driving focus. And that's what should unify us as a board in what we're looking for, what our vision is. And then our mission statement is, and I'll just read it to you, and I know you're familiar with it, and I know you all a lot of you played a role in writing it. The mission statement is: the Salt Lake City School District cultivates a love of learning in a diverse and inclusive school community, committed to educational excellence and integrity. In collaboration with families and community, we hold high expectations for all students, respond effectively to individual needs, and provide a safe, healthy environment in which every student can learn the academic, problem solving, and social skills required for success in college, career, and life. So just wanted to read those to you to set the tone of where we're at. And just remind us that these are statements that we're committed to as a board. Everybody still feel like that represents the work we're doing and what we're committed to? Yeah, thank you. I do see that, and thank you for that from all of you. I do see that from you. And we have a Board of Education handbook that we recently, not too long ago, Christy reminds me, I feel like it was been maybe 2 years, maybe not even 2 years that we reviewed this. So not too long ago that we went through this. Though we do have some new board members, and as is outlined in this, I was responsible for some new board member orientation for Michelle, which was like a huge fire hose of information, I'm sure, for you, Michelle. But I thought it might be useful for us to scroll through this. If it's something you can pull up, if it's not, I can screen share it. I think I can figure out how to do that. But I thought it might be useful for us to have a conversation around some of these topics and make sure, like with the vision and mission statement, that it's something that's in the front of our minds, something that we're focused on. And then I think we ought to have a conversation about some of these things as far as how we want to make sure that we're communicating well with our community, with each other, with district leadership, with our superintendent and business administrator, and then with district employees. And this is obviously not a conversation that we're going to complete in the next 40 minutes. But what I want to do is just set the framework for how we're thinking about these conversations moving forward, and then get some board input and feedback on how you'd like to proceed with professional development moving forward. I think this is a good opportunity for us as we move to a superintendent search, for us to spend some time, in the next few months as we gear up for that search, to come together as a group in establishing what our priorities are, and focus is, especially as we do that search. So let's start with going through the authority responsibilities of the board. Nate, do you want to lead us through that?
Yeah, give me 1 second. You caught me in the middle of a bite.
Oh, sorry about that.
Certainly, let me just make sure I have it. And I also provided the link in the chat so that y'all can take a look at that. Let me get there. So on page 1, there's 11 different points relative to the authority and responsibilities of the board. And I'm just going to read, kind of the header here. The powers and mandatory duties of the board are outlined in Utah law and State Board of Education rules. The board's primary responsibilities include, hiring and evaluating the superintendent, as well as hiring and evaluating the business administrator, developing with input from stakeholders and adopting a comprehensive long-range plan for student achievement, adopting policies for the governance and management of the district, and reviewing those policies on a regular basis, approving priorities for the fiscal management of the district, approving, adopting, and monitoring operating and capital budgets, establishing curriculum guides and course of study, approving collective bargaining agreements, establishing school boundaries, making decisions on educational, facility, and financial matters as necessary, and then, of course, advancing a legislative agenda. So those are the frameworks as it's outlined in our handbook, as well as in the State Board of Education rules in Utah law and code. I just thought it'd be a good place for us to start these responsibilities as we're mapped out. Like Melissa said, we have a superintendent search that we'll be talking about later on in the agenda, but also just making sure that we're on the same page about how we move forward relative to what is in our purview. So I would open it up for a discussion to see where folks are at with that. Is this a helpful refresher? Is it something that needs to be adapted and evolved? I know a lot of work went into it, so I'm hesitant to throw that out there, but knowing we have new leadership and new board members, and then of course new board members coming in November and January. But I just wanted to start here in talking with Melissa. I think our big focus is making sure that we're on the same page with just me personally, what I believe is one of our huge priorities and jurisdictional responsibilities, which is the superintendent and BA. So we've certainly hired a 2-year contract BA and Alan, and have a year to put together a plan, for a superintendent. And I think if we can come together around what exactly we're looking for, how we measure success, I think that would be a huge step for us in our work moving forward, and would add to the great work that we already do.
So my question for the board that I'd love your feedback on is you looked at those board responsibilities and authority how are we doing? Did anything surprise you? Are there things there that you weren't aware of? I'm sure you're familiar with your responsibilities. So I mean, I guess maybe the way I'd ask that is, are there things that we need to be working on with more focus? Any thoughts, Sam?
I think it's always good. I mean, I'm one of those people that's going to be gone in at the end of this year, and so my focus naturally has been kind of more on the short term. But I think it was a good reminder for me to be thinking about the long range goals of the district, because even what we do now, you know, as you learn, if you're a board member, things have a long kind of half-life. Decisions that get made often have a long sort of trajectory of having an effect on the way things go. And I think we could be doing a better job of planning for the legislative session in advance. I think this year we did a great job of being responsive, and I was really happy that we put together that op-ed when we did. But I think it's a good reminder on that front also to be thinking about what the legislative session is going to look like right after I'm out of office at the end of this year, and to maybe spend some time this year thinking about how we want to communicate our needs.
I think, okay, thank you, Sam. Any other comments on this section? Okay. The next sections are the 8 characteristics of effective school boards. And I think this is important that we're really familiar with this. These are characteristics that previous boards we've worked on over time to develop this, and it's pulled from lots of different sources. But I think that these are important things for us to prioritize. So does everybody have this in front of them? Yeah. Let's go ahead and read them, starting with you, Michelle. Will you read number 1? With your mouth full.
Yep, got it. Commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction, and define clear goals toward that vision.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that at all? No? Okay. I think we have some of that in our mission statement, right? And I think that is something that I think we're all committed to, a high expectation that all students. Mike, are you on, and do you have this document in front of you?
I'm on, I'm listening, but I don't have the document, so I'll pass.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Catherine, will you read number 2?
Possess strong shared beliefs and values about what is possible for students and their ability to learn, and of the system and its ability to teach all children at high levels.
Thank you. Nate, will you read number 3?
Yes, I can do that. Be accountability driven and spend less time on operational issues and more time focused on policies to improve student achievement. I just have to say I love this one and number 5 a lot. And I think it really speaks to the history and the current place of our board, especially with our literacy priority as a board. That's a really strong priority, and it's something that trickles down, and it's measurable, right, to student success and achievement, and I think speaks really highly of us, and would love to continue that type of work moving forward.
Thanks, Nate. Sam, will you read number 4?
Sure. Number 4, build a collaborative relationship with staff and the community and establish a strong communication structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals. And I'll just add parenthetically, I think this is a huge one for me. And if there's anything that we can do better in terms of listening to teachers, listening to employees at every level who clean our schools and feed our students, please let us know, because this is a crucial a crucial thing for us to make good decisions. You know, we can't, our decisions are as good as the information we have, and we don't always hear from a representative group of employees or stakeholders. So that's an important one.
Thanks, Sam. I'll read number 5. It's be data savvy and embrace and monitor data even when the information is negative, and use it to drive continuous improvement. I think that it's interesting that it adds even when the information is negative. I think one way to look at that is maybe not negative as much as it's not what we want to see, and not being afraid of facing that head on, acknowledging that we have struggles, and then not hiding from them, but pushing through and making good decisions based on that information to get better, right? It's the whole idea, for me, this embraces that whole idea of you know, failing forward. You got to try things to know if they're not going to work, and we get better as we go. It's that I always, you don't get. I always tell my kids as I was teaching them to ski, if you're not falling down, then you're probably not getting better, because you're not pushing yourself very, very hard. And so that idea of continuous improvement is important. Christy, will you read 6 and 7 if you have that in front of you?
Sure.
6 and 7, and then feel free to talk about them.
Sure. 6 is align and sustain resources such as professional development to meet district goals. And 7 is lead as a united team with the superintendent and business administrator, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. So I think these are 2 important goals for us. I think that when it says align and sustain resources, I've always felt like that goes back to something you said earlier, Melissa, that traditionally this board has always looked at ongoing funds as being very important, to be able to so that we can sustain those resources, that's been important, for us, and to be able to align them with the goals, that we've had. And I think that in order for us to be a highly effective school board, the only way to do that is to have a vision that is focused on student achievement. Leads to number 7. And I think that a united team can mean a lot of different things. A united team, for me, is the debate, that we have an opportunity to speak and to say what's on our mind, and to be able to provide our insights or our knowledge or our life experiences, whatever it is. And we have differing opinions, but that doesn't mean that we're not united, because for me, the united part is always the focus on students. So if we respect one another's roles, and we respect each other's voices, and that we try and have a collaborative nature, and that we are always looking to trust each other versus not trusting, which I think that all of us recognize is a challenge at times, then that's where the united part comes from. So it's not necessarily a united voice, but it's through our actions and how we conduct ourselves, which makes us highly effective school board members.
I'm going to go ahead and read number 8. Participate in team development and training, sometimes with their superintendent and their business administrator, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement efforts. So this speaks to the kind of work that Nate and I would like to suggest that we engage in as a board. building the capacity and trust and communication, the collaboration, that spirit of collaboration that Christy's talking about, is what we'd like to suggest that we engage in. But I would like to know, I don't know how the board is, what you all are thinking would be the most effective use of our time in that realm, team development and training. Thank you for reading through those with us.
I'll respond. I
Thanks,
agree
Mike.
with you. Go for it.
Thanks, Mike.
That's right. I agree. Go for it. I'll turn back on my camera now.
Good. Now, are you finished with your lunch? Is that why?
Yeah, I
You
didn't
didn't want us to see you.
I
Yeah.
have to wear a bib.
I love that you've got your blanket on. So I would like you to think about how that would look and how we would proceed and move forward in a thoughtful way, knowing that time is precious to all of us and that we have a lot on our plate in terms of work as a board. And I do think that time spent in this capacity will help us as we move forward and are tackling the projects that are in front of us. So I appreciate your support, Mike, and I want to hear where board members are on that and get some conversation started on where we might move forward as next steps.
Melissa,
Somebody's got an opinion.
do you mind if I just kind of jump in on some of my thoughts relative to potential topics? Sure. Just again, these aren't set in stone by any means, but I think, based on the candor of the discussion thus far, I think some time working on governance and really outlining those responsibilities of the board. Even in the handbook, something that's always stuck out with me is the role of the board being a governance, kind of responsibility versus a management responsibility. I would love for us to dive deeper into that. To Christy's point, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Christy, but maybe some work around communication and communicating effectively, especially around student outcomes. In my experience, and I know everybody, one of us has said it all before many times, but when we are really focused on student achievement and student outcomes, I've never seen this board, have a real difficult conversation around that. We're always aligned when it comes to the impacts our decisions are making on kids, which I've always found to be really, really exciting. So those are just two potential topics that I would like for us to be thinking about, and hopefully that might spark some ideas relative to how we might move forward.
And thank you. Christy, go ahead.
So I think that when we, well, first, thanks for those words, Nate, because one of the things that popped into my head as you were talking about communication is that communication is really broad, right? It's a broad topic. And I think that we need to decide what's relevant to us as board members when it comes to communication and how we're communicated to, or with each other. So I think that for me, it's many levels, whether it's our interaction with Larry or whether it's our interaction with Alan, I think that the most important piece also is how we interact with each other. And so I've been thinking about this, and you sparked that, Nate, by saying we need to make sure that we're communicating about our relevant topics, that we're not just wasting time, that we really are talking about the things that matter the most, which are student focused and outcomes. And I completely agree with that. But I also think there's another layer of our communication that goes back to what our roles and responsibilities are as board members. And that if we have a good understanding of what those roles and responsibilities are, that we understand what the roles and responsibilities are of Nate and Melissa as our leadership, you know, the interpersonal relationships that we have with each other, then for me, the communication becomes easy. You know, that we have a standard that we set. And so I would like us to have a conversation. It doesn't need to be a long drawn out conversation, but what are the expectations on a weekly basis? You know, of what are we expecting from Larry? What are we expecting from you know, from Alan? And then also, what are we expecting from each other? And for me, I want to micromanage any of my fellow board members. But I do think we have a responsibility to each other to communicate to each other either what we're engaged in, what we're hearing, relevant topics that need to be brought up. And I feel like that's been done in some silos instead of it being broad. And you know, let's go back to the standard that we had, that if one board member wants something, then all board members get it. If one board member wants to suggest something, then put that suggestion out to all board members, you know, so that we are all on the same page. Because my feeling is that if Catherine has an idea that she wants us to talk about, then I would like to know about it beforehand or all together, or however we want to communicate that, so that I can help support that idea, but also have the opportunity to debate, you know, if I'm on the other side. So I think that finding a standard, you know, or an expectation of what we want to see going forward in a weekly communication between the 9 of us, in order for us to be able to help support and move the district forward in the shared goals, you know, that we want to have. So I think that for me, those critical conversations that we'll be talking about a little bit later on when we talk about agenda items, I'm going to keep that in the front of my head, because I think it's super important that we look at not communication in a broad sense, but really what are those expectations that we want to have for the 9 of us.
Thank you, Christy. And definitely Nate and I were thinking along those lines as well. So what we'd like to do is professional development on kind of the things that Nate's mentioned, governance and communication, but you know, focus on our mission and vision statement and making sure that we're all focused around that. But then I'd like to have a conversation now. We've only got 20 minutes, a little less than that, just about some of those specifics that you're talking about, Christy. And I want to give our interim superintendent, Matt, an opportunity to talk through kind of what his expectation or what his plan is for communicating with us, and then give you a chance to hear from board members what they're wanting as well.
Okay. Well, I guess first and foremost is, like, I'm pretty open. I'm pretty available. You can all get a hold of me. And Christy, to your point, I think the regular communication is really crucial. And so what I was planning on doing was, starting next Monday, sending out an email in the morning to kind of make you aware of the things that were kind of at the forefront on any given week. And so I'll start out Monday morning with that. And I really both appreciate and want your feedback and input, because you're all in a unique position where you're the first place that people call. Sometimes for some people, right? It could be teachers, it could be your community members, and communicating that information, I think, is really, really important, because you'll hear things that I don't hear, and we want to make sure that we know the pieces we need to know to make the best decisions possible. So please share the ideas. I'm open. I'm willing to collaborate. I think working in silos, I mean, we need to make sure we communicate better with everybody. I mean, with the board and with myself, with Alan, but I think we need to do a better job here in the district office too, making sure that everybody here knows what the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, so we don't duplicate work, because there's too much work to do. And so we need to make sure everybody knows which page they're on. Especially, I think right now, given our COVID world that we're in, things tend to be changing very rapidly. We'll talk about this a little more when we get around to the updates. But we need to do a better job of communicating out to the public, because I know that some school districts are starting to put out some plans or pieces of plans or thoughts about their returning in the fall. And I think people are fairly understanding that it's a dynamic situation and that it keeps changing. But we have done a ton of work on this, but that's not apparent anywhere to necessarily to our families. And so we'll share some of that information with you today, and then we're going to have to put something together and get it out, I think, by Monday at the very latest from the district. But those kinds of things I would also like to. I'll send those past you before we send that out. What questions do you have? What do you want from me?
So what I hear is that we'll have a Monday morning. This is what's coming up this week, and that you're looking for feedback from board members on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound good to everyone? That's a start, right? Thank you, Larry.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And then, as you receive feedback and questions, I think it's important to then loop everyone in on the conversations too, so that especially if it's important things that board members
Right.
are going to want to have, a heads up on. Okay. I can tell you that as I've been board president and received emails, I do try and forward to you everything that I get, and I try and include everybody on that so that you are seeing what I'm seeing as well. And I'm always happy to take feedback on that. I recognize that I'm not perfect at it, but I am working on it and trying to share.
Well, probably a good default is over communication,
Right.
especially at first, until we find that place.
Set some norms. Yeah. Catherine, go ahead.
Right. I also think that if we have ideas that we're sharing with people, I think other board members need to remember that we're not making decisions. If we have ideas of things that we're going to do, ideas of how to deal with our situation for COVID or how to solve things, that we're sharing those ideas, and board members shouldn't feel insecure or threatened if we're calling people and saying, hey, I've got an idea about how we could address this or how we could cope with this, or strategies we could use. No one should feel insecure or threatened, or as though that they're being cut out, that we're saying, hey, I've got this idea, and that we can share it, because as we all know, we can't have a meeting with everyone. We can't talk with more than 2 board members. And so no one should feel threatened if they're not being included, because it's really hard to call 7 other people. So, there's nothing that's trying to be done behind people's backs. So I think that's really important to know, that there's no, that no one needs to feel threatened or cut out or anything like that. And that's really an important thing to understand. If anyone wants information, they should just call and feel, and just call people and say, hey, what's up? I heard you had an idea.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point. I think that kind of goes to the over communication, at least, is going to be a good default, right?
Yeah.
Let's just talk.
Yeah. For me, I like the free flow of ideas. And then at the point we're going to actually act on something or incorporate something, then sure, we gotta make sure everybody knows about it. But good ideas can come from.
We should be sharing ideas, especially right now, and no one should feel afraid to share ideas because other people will feel threatened. We should just feel like we should share ideas and get back and forth and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it's as much about feeling threatened as it is just making sure we're doing it in
I
a
appreciate
way
you
that's
saying that,
inclusive.
Melissa, because I'm not sure where the threatened part is coming from. You know, why that has to be the context is threatened.
Let's just make sure it's not, right? I mean, that's the point. We're just going to share information. We're going to talk to each other. We're going to talk to our superintendent and business administrator and include them in all of the conversations. I think that uh, as board members, we want to be as open and accessible as we can be to all ideas and to all communication. I just want to make sure that there aren't scenarios where people are um, either sort of guided away from talking to board members or afraid to talk to board members. I want us to be as accessible as we can be.
Maybe
Sorry
at
to
some
trip over
point,
that.
yeah, if we just always the best intentions. And if someone does ever at some point feel like they were left out of a conversation, let's talk about that. I mean, we
Yeah.
can, because I do think, you know, and like I've said before, I've been in the district a long time, and I think the board's always been really focused on those things that are most important, you know, on student achievement, taking care of staff, and it's always felt really supported in that way. So I think as long as we start from that place of assuming best intentions, we're going to end up in a good place.
Okay.
Melissa, do you mind if we hear from Alan based on his role and his position with the short time that we have left and some of what his thoughts are going to be moving forward over the next couple of years that we were working.
So as you scroll through that document, we've kind of rushed through a little bit with the relationship of the board between the board and the superintendent, but I think we've had a good conversation and established that what we want is to be open and talking to each other. Then moving on to the responsibilities of the business administrator, I will defer to you, Alan, to talk about how you would like to communicate with the board.
Sure. First, I haven't had a chance to thank the entire board for your support in this position, so thank you very much. Again, like Larry, you know, I'm very open. If you have a question, ask, and let's get it answered. If we get into nitty-gritty details, you know, like what kind of information do you want at each meeting? You know, we have those financial reports that are a part of each meeting. I know in the past as we've met with the board finance committee, you know, if there's some things you want to change or see differently, I think the finance committee is a great method to review what those reports look like, what they're saying. And if you want to make any changes, the committee can make that recommendation to the board and we can go forward with any recommended changes.
I like that. Can I just interject here and say, is that something the board feels comfortable tasking the finance committee with the next meeting to look at how things are reported to the board and just, it can be exactly the same as it is if that's what you as a finance committee support and bring back to the board. And I think we have good reporting. I think it's probably good, given that we have a new business administrator, for us to revisit that. The board's comfortable with tasking the finance committee with that, in addition to their other responsibilities at their next subcommittee meeting. Okay. All right.
I do think it's one of those, we're going to keep doing it the same way unless somebody suggests a different or better way as far as those reports go.
Okay.
And again, as I kind of learn my place and learn, I appreciate your patience. I'll be happy to answer any question. Maybe run it past Larry or President Ford, just to make sure that we're following proper protocol. It's always important. But if you do have any financial questions, I know sometimes when we talk debits and credits, people get bored. I love debits and credits, but I'm more than happy to really delve into the overall budget and financial statements of the district, so we can truly understand what information is included in those reports and get a better understanding of those reports.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. We have about 5 minutes before we will need to end this conversation and begin the meeting. Well, I guess it's all public. We're all on Facebook. Hi, Facebook. But to shift to the next agenda item. So I do want to hear if the board supports working with a facilitator for professional development, perhaps in two or three meetings, and want to know if the board is comfortable with giving Nate and I the direction to move forward along those lines, and how you want that process to look, and feedback, your feedback for, that process. Anybody? Sam?
I would be comfortable with that. I mean, I think we would need to have some input on who that person was, and I know we've had some discussion offline about that. But I think, I've heard two people recommended for two slightly different versions of this task, and so if we could kind of maybe set a date to submit recommendations for who we'd want to work with and what exactly the scope would be, I think that would be good. And then we could generate, two or three names and different projects to consider, and set a time to do that at a later date. I mean, we've obviously got a ton of pressing stuff, so I would want to be careful that this doesn't become too time-consuming of a discussion. But for the two of you that I know have worked a little bit on this, I think it's more than fair that we give you some time to talk about the people you'd like to work with and what you'd like to work with them on. So we could do that either at the next meeting, or maybe it's better to do it in September. I don't know.
Well, given our time constraints now, go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, what I'd like to suggest is, and Melissa, please let me know your capacity and comfort level, but, and Larry and Alan as well. But I think we've heard a lot of really good feedback about some potential topics that we could be discussing. And what I think I'd like to do is really, pull all of my notes together and compare that with Melissa's thoughts and Larry's observations as well, and Alan's, and really just come back at our next meeting and present some options of potential topics, maybe potential facilitators, and an outline of time. I'll be honest, in the conversations that Melissa and I had just getting ready for this portion of the agenda, we're thinking, maybe an hour, maybe two at the most, very, very most, parceled up on some agendas over the next series of meetings that we have over the next few months. So I don't think it would be, a complete dedication of a board meeting that we have scheduled, to the whole discussion. But I think what I'd like to do is really pull together my notes and present a proposal to this board with some various options around topics and potential facilitators, with your feedback as well between now and then. Larry?
I actually think that'd be super helpful, because I think it's gonna help to kind of hone in on what exactly it is you want this professional development on. I mean, is it team building, or is it problem solving, or is it communication? And if it's communication, then what aspects of that are you interested in? Just so that when you bring in the facilitator, you can bring in the right person to achieve that specific goal that you've set for yourself.
Okay. Well, then, what I'd love to hear is your feedback offline. Send Nate and I feedback on what you'd like to see, if you'd like to see it, and we'll move from there with a proposal, which we'll present at the next board meeting. Fair? Okay. Like to move to our more formal, less part of the board meeting, which is convening at 1 o'clock, and it's 1 o'clock right now. I'd like to welcome anybody who's joining us now, having looked at our agenda, knowing that we're starting on this portion of the meeting at 1 o'clock. So welcome, and welcome yet again to board members who've been here since 10 this morning. Thank you for your time and dedication. I do appreciate that. We have a lot to talk about on the rest of our agenda. I'd like to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm hoping that you can join me in that, and I will say it and lead it. But if you'll stand and join me and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mel. Yes, go ahead, Christy.
Before we go into our consent agenda, I would like to request that we pull number 8, the contracts of the interim superintendent and business administrator contracts, and put them onto our action agenda. There's just some small edits that I didn't catch until this morning. And it's basically just around the pronouns that board member Salazar and I talked about that are still in the contracts. And there's also one section in the business administrators section on under evaluation that doesn't make sense. And so it's not put them forward. That's why I want to put them on action, because we'll take action and approve them. But we just need to make sure that those things are cleaned up in the contracts.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Christy. And thanks for letting me know. So yes, we've got the consent agenda, which I would like to take a motion on. The only thing I've heard then is we'll remove and move to action the contracts for interim superintendent and business administrator.
I second the motion to move it.
Okay. Can I get a motion on the rest of it?
I can do that.
Thanks, Christy.
So I move that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of the purchasing and accounting report, the budget report for May 2020, the payment voucher report, the school financial report for May 31st, 2020, the human resource services report, minutes for the board meeting May 5th, 2020, minutes for the board meeting May 19th, 2020, minutes for the board meeting May 21st, 2020, minutes for the board meeting May 29th, 2020, and the URS resolution for 2020-2021.
Do you want to second that, Mike?
Second.
Okay, let's vote on that. We'll start with you, Michelle.
Michelle Tuichpo, yes.
Mike Demalka, yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay, thank you. So the consent agenda is approved, 7-0, accepting the contracts for interim superintendent and business administrator, which will move to action. So the next section on our agenda is the request to speak. And our process for that is still an email to the board received the day before and through Lisa Alamon, and she will forward those requests, those emails to us to read, and then attach them to the minutes of the meeting. So that's our current process. We're always open to feedback on that. And so then moving along to our discussion agenda, and I'm going to turn the time to our interim superintendent. Welcome to your first official board meeting. Even though you've been at it for 3 hours already, this official board meeting, we'd like to welcome you as our interim superintendent. Really thrilled to have you lead our district through this next year, and looking forward to working with you as a board. And I'll turn the time to you through this portion of our discussion agenda. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's my pleasure to be part of the group. And we should start with a really, really big problem. So we'll dig in on our update in regards to school reopening. So I've invited a few people here to update you on pieces of the work that's been done. There's been an enormous amount of work done, though, and I think you all did get the restart framework, as well as some of the documents from the state. So the two things you got from the state in your packet were the planning requirements and recommendations for the K-12 reopening. And along with that, you would have also got the K-12 reopening plan assurances. And that's something that we're going to have to look at and do and have a board approval on by August 1st. So something to put in the back of the mind there. There's also a school reopening handbook that's got a lot of useful information too. The framework part, a lot of this work's been done over the last, I don't know, maybe month or so, feels like. There's been a lot of groups pulled together to work on this. That has included parents, classified, custodial. Lots of people have been involved in these conversations. But the document that we have right now is huge. That restart framework is more information. I think it includes things that our public is not looking for right now. Like, they're not really going to care how we reopen a particular department at the district office unless it's one that they visit. I think the biggest concern is the reopening of actual school buildings and the potential of having students in buildings. And so I think that's kind of where we want to keep the focus. What I've asked is for people to just give you a very brief update and then open it up to questions. And in regards to the communication piece, I just want to reiterate that we have not posted anything yet in terms of reopening. But I think we need to get something out to the public, get something posted very soon, if not by the end of this week, by the start of next week. Some school districts have started to post things, and they're kind of in different degrees. I know that Jordan School District today decided that they were going to go back 4 days a week, and they posted some information relative to that. Other districts have posted how they're going to deal with a complete return to school. So we've got some big decisions to make. But I think we need to let people know that we're in the process. I think people do understand that it's an always changing environment, and we're going to make the best decision we can make based on where we are right now. And we're going to keep evaluating it as we move forward so that we can do the right thing for our community. So we'll start with Dr. Michelle Amio, and she's just going to give you a brief overview. You've seen some survey data, but I don't think you've seen all the survey data. We just got some new stuff. So I asked Michelle to just give you a brief update on that survey data. Michelle, do you want to take that away?
Do you want me to show anything, or just use my hands to talk through this?
It's okay if you show something if you like, and then if we print it up and send it out to you later, we can do that.
Okay. So let's see. Do somebody need to allow me to share my screen, or?
I think you can just do that by the kind of that upload looking button at the bottom.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Make sure I've got it right.
If you like, and then if we print it up and send it out to you later.
Okay. So let's see. Do I need to? I think. I'm sorry. I need to. A little bit. Hang on. I gotcha. Okay. I'm gonna make sure I've got the right. Yeah. Okay, let me try this again. Sorry about that.
Let's make sure everybody's microphones are off. I think I've got one on Tiffany Hall and Mike. If you can turn your microphones off.
All right. Is everybody okay? Can you hear me? So I was told I have 5 minutes, and I've timed this a couple times, and I think I've done it in 7. So I think everyone has seen the survey results and the study that we did. We sent this a survey out to parents and students that had similar questions about their remote learning experience, and then one to teachers and principals that also we wanted to understand their experience as well. They were different questions because they were more around teaching and learning and network and what they could do to support schools. As far as the plans to reopen, of course, all of the stakeholders' input was really important. So we were able to deploy these surveys. And I'm not going to read the whole report to you, and I think you've probably read this already. But we, for the most part, parents and students and all of our stakeholders recognize that there was a lot of support that was sent out to schools and teachers and parents, and there was a lot of acknowledgement for that. But then, of course, parents, teachers, and students expressed an overall need to have a much better experience in the fall. So teaching and learning, of course, has gone to work on supporting teachers and schools, and network, of course, is doing the same thing. Something that really popped out with parents was that they want to know what the fall reopening plans are, as we know what they are. So, and not to hold that secret or captive until right before school starts, because they really want to be a part of those decisions in their lives of their students. And then really the other piece that was major in the study was that students really felt positive about the experience as long as teachers were staying connected with them and they were connected with their classmates. So I don't know if there's any questions about how we deployed the surveys or what responses, what the 2 responses were, but we had a rapid response that's outlined in this initial piece of the survey, and then the extended response was, of course, the ongoing piece. We made sure that we were able to measure based on the students, using the students as a metric to make sure that we understood the stratification of the surveys and make sure that we captured input from all of our, at least pieces and samples of our stakeholders. So you can see that the parent response distribution was quite good across all of our elementaries, middle and high, and networks. And then, of course, we always disaggregate by our 4, which is racial ethnicity distribution. The blue is Salt Lake District, and the green was the response rate. And then, of course, the other 3, which are income, English as second language, and students with disabilities and services. So you can see that our parent responses were stratified pretty nicely across what we know. And then, of course, the student response demographics came up next. We measured them the same way to make sure that we had input from all of our schools and students. And then the last part of this report was about the teacher response demographics and their experience. And that piece was really bundled up and packaged off and sent off to Dr. Hall and her team. I'm on that team too, and we're planning our support for teachers based on where they are and what they indicated. So I'm going to jump down to the last part of this that I think is probably the most important piece, is about the parent plans. In this initial survey, we asked parents about their plans to return based on what was happening in mid-May. And at the time, most of the parents just indicated that they plan to send their kids back to a Salt Lake City School District school. We had about 95% of, well, about 90% of our parents said, yeah, we're sending our kids back. And of those that were not returning, they were either moving or their child had graduated from high school, or they were thinking about homeschooling or online school. So with that, and knowing that we needed to know a little bit more about how the parents were feeling about the fall reopening, I'm going to skip down to the addendum of this report. Larry and Tiffany have seen this. We just closed this final survey. Sorry to scroll so quickly. I'm feeling under pressure to get to this part. So this is the addendum. So the second survey that we deployed was on June 23rd, and we closed it on July 3rd. So we had a large response rate. We had 9,800 students represented by close to 8,000 parents. And this was just deployed in an anonymous way, so we are able to see what schools and grade levels the parents are responding around. So we know that we had a nice distribution across the district again. So we had about, when we asked parents about what their plans were, we asked again what they thought, and it matched fairly nicely with the mid-May responses. Most of our parents plan to return to Salt Lake City School District. The next part of this, we asked about their comfort level if, as we return to a normal, a new normal or green phase. And then we asked about the return to a yellow phase, both cases to a normal school schedule. So a normal, new normal green phase based on the phase guidelines that Utah Health Department has put out. There was somewhat of a discomfort level, but about the majority of parents were okay with it. So that would be the red and the purple responses. This is elementary students, middle, high, and then of course mixed families that didn't respond to this, had multiple kids. However, when we got to yellow and said, would you feel comfortable returning your student in a yellow phase to a normal schedule, that shifted quite a bit, and a large number of the parents were uncomfortable. So we then, of course, in the survey asked about alternative scheduling over a return to distance education, which is, of course, what they experienced in the spring. And what we found was that most of our parents preferred an alternative schedule over a full return to school in a distance learning setting. So the alternative scheduling options that we offered or stated in our survey during a yellow phase was half-day sessions with kids coming in the morning or afternoon, and then working online the other half of the day, full-day sessions where students attend in person certain days of each week, and then weekly sessions where they alternate during the week or during the month, week by week. Or then, of course, we asked them about the full-time return to distance education. Most strongly supported was either a half-day or alternating full-day schedule if a normal school schedule was not possible. So if we're in a yellow phase, that was what the majority of our parents indicated. And most opposed or strongly opposed a full return to distance online education. And then, of course, the graphics that are below are just the data that we collected for those results. The final question about scheduling had to do with scheduling siblings together. Of the students, of the parents that responded that do have multiple children in our school, 60% of them indicated that that was very important to them to schedule them on similar schedules. So that will also pose some I guess, some scheduling issues that we'll have to think about with those families. And then finally, parents were asked if their children took the bus and if they were still planning on taking the bus. So most of our parents indicated that children didn't take the bus, but those that did indicate their child typically took the bus, less than 10% of them overall indicated that they would not include their children in that schedule. So as far as children that take the bus, it looks like most of them are willing to put them on those buses. The last part of this survey had to do with really communicating to our families that we were thinking about the precautions that we need to have in place. Certainly we wanted to know what they thought about it. So we asked them questions about the importance of certain aspects of precautions that we would have in place, and that included cleaning, limiting classroom seating, and of course you can see elementary, middle, high school, multiple grade levels. When I say multiple grade levels, that just means that the parent didn't indicate for each child, they just said they had 3 children in our system. Staggering drop-off and pickup time was interesting because you can see that only about 1/3 of the parents felt like that was important or extremely important. And that really is in line with what we heard in the first survey. And then in this one is that they really want consistency in scheduling. So I think the idea of staggering drop-offs or pickup times is sort of incongruent with consistency in schedules for their children and their day-to-day lives. But you can see that it pops back up as we talk about staggering recess and lunchtime. We talked about how we asked about hand washing and hand sanitizer stations, and this is what we expected. The majority of parents found that was an important aspect. And then, of course, more politically charged, I think, we asked about temperature checks for students and for staff, and then wearing masks. And you can see the results there. The blue column is elementary, green is middle, and then this last white column is for high school. So those are things that will inform us as we plan to move forward. The last part of this report and this addendum was just asked about after-school activities and the importance of those precautions that would be in place in that regard. So that would be important for after-school activities. We had similar results for that. I think that was 7 minutes, Larry.
Yeah, it's maybe 7.5. 7.5. That's fine.
Oh, dang it. Okay. I cut it down by 30 seconds. So that was really, really quick, but that's both the parent-student survey. I didn't talk about the teacher piece because I've talked teaching and learning extensively about those pieces for teachers. And then this second part is relatively new. Larry and I talked about it, and Tiffany and I talked about it just yesterday.
So we can take some questions now if any board members have questions. Do you want to unshare, Michelle? I can't see if anybody's.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I was trying to find there we go. All right.
Okay. Yeah, Catherine.
So thank you, Michelle. That was really great. And I appreciate your compiling all that information. And I know that you didn't design those questions, all those questions, and Larry didn't either. So I'm interested in what you're saying about designing things in terms of our school day, in terms of parents' feedback. And actually, I really hope you don't design our school day and our things in terms of parents' feedback. For example, I mean, staggering, if parents don't care about staggering the day in terms of, you know, if that's something they don't care about, but they do care about hand washing. And what we've learned scientifically in the last couple of weeks is that actually it is important to stagger, and it's less important to do hand washing. I mean, what we've learned is that fomites are not as important, and aerosol transmission is important. So I think, you know, what we know is that we have to go with the science and not necessarily about what parents think. And I know you know that, and I know it's not, you know, your survey results, and I really appreciate your survey results. But I guess
no worries, Catherine. I know you know that I
encourage us to continue to go with the most recent science as we know, and as you know, as we decide, and we just really need to go with what we know will keep our students and our children healthiest. And
yes, I'm sorry, Catherine. I just wanted to just say that we fully agree when we deployed those questions, and that I'm happy to send those out, gather the data, and hand it off to those who are planning. I think maybe the intent was just to communicate that we were thinking about it. I think it was important, but thanks for acknowledging that. We didn't write those questions on the second survey, so. But it's informative, at least, to see where parents stand on it.
And I think it's important to know that parents are really interested and concerned and want to give feedback and want to know that they you know, that they're anxious. Everyone's really anxious about what we're going to do. I think that's so. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Even that feedback that we did ask for, the scenarios that we gave them were green and yellow. And so we kind of, you know, we sort of preset the survey based on that. And we're in orange right now in Salt Lake City. So it's the scenario is not even exactly compatible with that. So we do need to keep that in mind, and we do need to make decisions based on science and fact.
Yes.
For sure. Any other questions for Michelle from any of the board members?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, we also scientifically know that children are less likely than 1% to pass on anything to adults. I don't think we ought to express our concerns or worry about those kind of things that are happening with our children. I think we ought to let them go to school.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. It's also complicated because all these schools have adults, and what we need both in the school. So thank you. All right, Tiffany was going to give you a brief update on she's done a ton of work with teaching and curriculum and just done some really amazing things thinking about fall and teachers and professional development. So we'll have her give you an update, and then again, we'll take questions. Anybody else has a question on the survey?
I would just love it if we could get the last few pages that weren't in what was, I think we have up to page 27, but whenever.
Yeah. We'll get those to you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, Tiffany.
Great, thanks. I just want to try to beat the 7.5-minute record of Michelle, because I know you have a lot to go through today. So I have a quick PowerPoint to just sort of outline some of the big pieces that we have been doing and thinking about as we have looked at the survey data and also talked to and heard from parents and students and teachers throughout the school closure as we prepare for the fall. So I just want to review the kind of our central piece in teaching and learning, which is to provide instructional equity for all of our students. And of course, that is standards-based grade level content. We want to make sure that in all of our iterations, whether that's online or in person, that students have the appropriate rigor and are learning on grade levels so that we know that we are preparing them, as has been part of our board goal with our 3% literacy across all of the academic levels, to make sure that when we graduate a student, that student is ready to do college or career level work. And of course, that means that we need to support effective teaching strategies that are research-based, and that we are also integrating that culturally sustaining piece as a support also to our board goal around social and emotional learning, and making sure that students have opportunities to participate in post-secondary opportunities. And all of those things were something that really became a part of what happened through this dismissal. So just really quickly, we knew we had a couple of big issues, and one is, as Dr. Amio's data show, that we had students participating at a variety of different levels. We had some students who were with us every day. We have some students that were there, scattered through a variety of things that were going on in their home, maybe once a week or once a month, or some not at all. And so we know that there will be some learning loss and there will be some gaps there. We also know, as the superintendent said at the beginning, that we'll be flipping possibly between online or in person or a little both. We really don't know. So our hallmark of being agile and adept as we look at the 2020-2021 school year is going to be right on the money. We don't know which way we're going to flip or flop. We just have to be really flexible. But within that flexibility, we must have a cohesive educational program, and we must tie that to our K-12 learning goals. So in order to do that and to move through with that, one of the conversations that we have started to have with teachers and throughout the district is about blended learning. And what does that look like and mean for us as we consider the idea of not only this particular situation, but what 21st century learners will need to do for their entire life, which is learn partly in a class with a teacher, learn independently and outside of that in an online situation where they are able to communicate and collaborate with their peers and colleagues as they work through problems and find solutions. But that must be on a learning path that is organized. And this graphic is also in our restart plan that you saw and is connected to the Christensen organization, which has done a lot of research into blended learning and different models. And the three things that we're really focused on are connecting to those priority standards and core ideas. We know that as we are making all of these changes, we must focus on what the very most important things are and work and focus on those, because that might be all the time that we have. It gives us an opportunity to really begin to look at and move toward personalized or individualized learning that will give students choice in what and how and when they are completing work, which is another part that also connects both our 3% learning goal and our social emotional learning goal from the board very well as we build that interdependence and independence into our learning designs. So this graphic, which was in the restart plan, really in some way summarizes, and we couldn't really think of which one was, what's the chicken and what's the egg, but we need all of these things to make a cohesive plan. We need that framework for instruction, the access to all of our technology, learning, and other resources, which our information technology department under Sam Quantz they have been amazing at their rapid deployment of getting things out and helping us problem solve and finding solutions to really bring kids into the learning, developing that consistent learning program. And then, as you can see, we're worried about learning loss. We want to use assessments so that we don't say, we lost fourth quarter or we lost third trimester, so we need to reteach that again. We don't have time for that. What we need to do is get in, use some solid, effective assessments to determine what students need, and then have a responsive curriculum map that will enable us to do instruction where students are and give them what they need to come through and to get back on grade level. We're going to do that with coaching and support, and we're also looking at some online resources and content that will help. So just very quickly, I'm going to go through some of the big pieces, and then I'll stop for questions. But one of the biggest things that we did, and I think is going to be one of the most powerful and is also one of the largest lifts, is that we have moved to a consistent online learning platform. We are putting all of our teachers in Canvas. And as they build their Canvas course, this is going to create one location for all of our learning materials. We heard in all of our surveys, as you looked again at the data, that parents and students were often frustrated by how many places they had to click to find different learning resources. We are, in putting everything in Canvas, able to have, even if it's not within the Canvas shell itself, everything will open through that place. So that will really streamline the way students and families are able to get to the resource. It will give us an ongoing record. We know that we may have some students who might have to go out and quarantine for a few weeks if their families or if they are exposed. So having that online access will allow them to continue to stay up with their class more easily. We have found that having that common platform allows teachers to share their work and align their teaching more effectively. And we've seen some excellent examples of classes where a teacher had to go out for a few weeks during the dismissal, and because the teachers in the grade line were aligned, they were able to share and even share students to keep that learning in the same place. And then, of course, will help us facilitate between online and live classrooms. We're also bringing in, have been researching to find high quality online materials that tie to our core and respond to the learning needs and the instructional needs of the online classroom. Zoom, we are now looking at a district license for that so that we can incorporate some of the small group and large group pieces that includes. You're all very familiar with Zoom, so I won't say anything else about that. Newsela is a wonderful resource that we're very excited about to roll out 312. It provides fiction and nonfiction reading in science, social studies, and English language arts. And those readings come to students at 4 different levels. So a teacher and a student can work through a set of 4-question assessments to make sure that students are able to access reading and learning independently. This is very important for any online component of work that we're doing, because students will need to be able to access that independently. We have another tool that we're negotiating with right now and hope to finish soon called Seesaw, which we have found to be very useful in helping students in our early primary grades, as well as some of our special education classes, be able to communicate more effectively. Mystery Science is aligned to our SEED standards and will work in our elementary schools to help provide grade level, high quality support for science instruction. Eureka Sync and Equip. This is a new piece that Great Minds has put out this year, and that is a very targeted math assessment with fillable PDF work that will really respond to some of the questions and concerns that teachers had about teaching math online. We know that teaching math online is difficult because of the notation and getting homework and doing those kinds of things. So putting that piece in, we think will really help improve and support elementary math instruction during those critical years. And then our Nearpod, which is a student-driven system that teachers can use and have been using for a few years. And again, we can talk about any of those offline in more detail. We're also doing a lot of planning. This is the bulk of our summer work right now. Our academic coaches have been working to assess. They're working on looking at the assessments we have available to us to figure out what we can do and how we can best identify and then address learning gaps. They're currently planning K-12 with teachers and professional learning communities and together to adapt our resources and use our adopted materials in blended learning environments. They're creating model lessons. We've heard from teachers that what they really want to see is an exemplar. So we're creating model lessons, and we're also locating exemplars that we can bring together into a single location to demonstrate best practices in Canvas and in teaching online. And then we are working through, and we know that every school, through the support of the board, has access to an academic coach and to a library technology teacher. And both of those groups, both our academic coaches and our librarians, are working to become Canvas experts that will provide on-site support and instruction for all teachers at their school site. So that is their summer work. We have a lot of professional development going on. A lot of it is on Canvas. We are trying to differentiate and stagger that as much as possible. Our beginning Canvas course, which is a 6-hour course we do over 2 days and 3-hour sessions, we will have through between the first trainings at the end of June and our last kind of open trainings through mid-August, the opportunity or seats for 900 teachers. So we are trying to provide more than enough opportunity for teachers who have not worked with Canvas before to begin to really work through that. And then subsequently through, and we are also working with our new software that I just went through to have content program support for all teachers available starting in August with a real emphasis on what are we doing with our new higher orientation and what will we do with our August PD, as well as the opportunities through the summer where teachers are receiving the negotiated rate of $30 an hour for participating. We're also really looking at the support that our parents need. And by August, our goal is to have instructional videos that would be interpreted in our major languages for how parents can log in and look at some very specific tools. First, PowerSchool Access, which is kind of the be-all, end-all. If you can get into PowerSchool, you can see everything: Canvas, grades, attendance, lunch, all of that stuff. But we also have 3 specific Canvas tools. We want to make sure that parents know how to get into their students' Canvas account and see what assignments they have, see how their work is, look at the feedback they're getting from teachers. There's also a phone app for both types of phones, your iPhone and your Android, that they can use to check in on students and their progress. And then also we can sync calendars so that if you're a parent with an Outlook or a Google calendar that you use typically or often, then we can sync your students' Canvas calendar to that as well. So we will have those up and available for principals to push out during back to school and on their site websites. And then also through all of our district, we'll work with Yandri in communication to push that out through all of our district pieces. That is some of the overview of our work between now and the start of school as we try to make that as effective and efficient as possible. And I'm going to unshare my screen and see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Tiffany. I think one of the key things there is like we're going to be prepared for whatever. If we were entirely online or entirely in person, we're going to be able to do that. And I think it's more than just saying, oh, we can't do school, we've got to go online, so we give kids a computer and send them home. We've got to have quality curriculum because we got to keep moving kids forward.
Superintendent, that is so right. And one of the things that came out in the survey that Dr. Año pointed out to us when she debriefed us in teaching and learning is parents really understood in the spring that this was unprecedented and that we were not prepared for this. And nobody had an online class for this, and so they cut us a lot of slack. But if this happens again in the fall, we really do need to be prepared to make sure students continue to learn really in an effective and cohesive manner.
Yeah, and just want to add one more thing. This seems like a real area of opportunity, because, you know, within all of this and all the kind of thing, we're having to do things that we didn't have to do before. There are going to be some takeaways from this that are going to serve us in the long run, even once we get past COVID-19. So it's great. It's a great opportunity as well.
It is. Never waste a good crisis.
Michelle.
I have a question about the Canvas training for teachers. How is that being communicated across to the different schools so that teachers know that it's happening? Because I know that I've spoken to a few teachers in my precinct, and they're feeling very inadequate about, you know, using Canvas, and they just really want to be trained so that they can start preparing. They feel like there's teachers that are way ahead of the game and are already preparing through Canvas. So they're feeling a little behind. So how are they being communicated
Sure.
so that they know how to sign up, I guess?
Thanks for that too, Michelle. I've been getting similar feedback. Sorry, Tiffany.
No. All of our, and so, you know, it's kind of a catch-22 in terms of you don't want to check your email during the summer, but all of our trainings are going out through, we have a teacher list that sends them to every teacher in the district. And, you know, we had an initial group in June. We kind of ascertained where we were. We did some, you know, checking around to see how many do we think we needed to offer, and then sent out a recent training schedule that has classes all the way through August, and they are all through, or they're currently all in our Midas system. And so, and I will post that on our website as well if we feel like teachers are not getting that information through email. But we have, that is how we're sending stuff out, is just letting them know, here are the classes, dates, times, where they sign up. Everything is being conducted online, of course. And so as we put that information out, that is going through our major K-12 certified lists for the district.
Yeah, Sam?
I have a couple questions. Thank you, Dr. Hall. So our major languages that the in videos are going out in, what are those beyond English and Spanish? Or are they going out in multiple languages?
Yes, I would not be able to tell you off the top of my head what they all are, but I know our translation department, when we ask them to do kind of the quote unquote major languages, gives them to us in about 7 or 8. So those and those are the languages we do large district events that we generally will have interpreters for.
Thank you. And could you maybe expound a little bit about the plans for August PD? You sort of alluded to them, but I just wondered if you had a little more to say about that.
I do. I will say that some of that is still in negotiation, and that we haven't had a final chance to meet with Mr. Tobler and talk with him from the SLEA perspective about that. But in broad strokes, what I will say is we have all of our professional development days are at the front of the school year this time. And so we will have opportunities on the second and third day where we generally do a lot of district level professional development. We will make all of these trainings available, beginning, advanced, intermediate campus. We'll hold planning sessions with coaches and grade level or school teams. Those are parts that we are still working through details on. We will hold professional development on all of the software and curriculum resources that we have that are all online. We're going to offer that over those 2 days, as well as, again, all of the days preceding that, starting in August, so that teachers can take them either synchronously or asynchronously, depending on what they decide or determine that they need over the course of those days in the first week of school. Because many of our courses we are designing to be asynchronous, if that is something that they are maybe, what they really need to do is spend 6 or 8 hours in Canvas training. But later in the year they want to do something in science or look again at what happened in Muzella, then they would be able to go back and look at that posted record of all of those asynchronous trainings to use those trainings at that time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to school leadership. So I don't know, Roberto, if you want to kind of introduce what your people are going to talk about. I know that Brian and Chris and Becky have been doing tons of work. And it's, well, I'll turn it over to you, Roberto. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with yourself and the board. Becky, Brian, and Chris have led our school groups with regards to the high schools, the middle schools, and the elementary schools on our restart plans. We're going to provide a quick overview, some highlights and recommendations, and some of the discussions that are taking place in those meetings. And I think we're going to start off with Ms. Pitto. Becky, if you want to take over.
Hey, Becky, turn your mic on.
There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks for, I first want to say I appreciate you having us here to present to you and allowing us to be here where we can answer questions and share everything that we have learned in the past 4 or 5 months, 3 to 4 months about working with our teachers and working with our administrators in unusual circumstances. We wanted to start today by showing you the guiding principles that we have been using so that you understand we are all on the same page and that you know the foundation for our work this summer with principals and with teachers and with stakeholders. So our task has been to develop systems and procedures to effectively and efficiently support a blended learning environment so that part of that, we went right into some guiding principles and looking what would help us be on the same page. So we chose, it was actually Dr. Cunningham started us with these 4 principles of compassion, communication, collaboration, and common sense, which have really been effective and helpful in our work because it's helped us keep our focus on students, which is what it needs to, where our focus needs to be. And our focus on teachers, they're a valuable resource for us. And so I do want to just highlight 2 of these being collaboration and common sense. We've been collaborating with all of the other departments in the district, having weekly meetings, and then also just a lot of additional meetings where we've gone step by step over concerns, over questions. As you know, there are many, to make sure that we are all working in tandem. And then common sense. Regardless of what we hear, regardless of what surveys show, the bottom line is we want to use common sense coupled with good, solid facts and information that show us what's best for our students and families. Another focus, obviously, on excellence and equity. That's what we are about, particularly as a district, in equitable, making sure that we provide equitable resources and support for our students through whichever model we are currently in, and work whatever problem it is that comes or challenge that comes our way. Equitable resources for our special ed and ELL students, and then this notion that remember, this is new to our teachers. None of us, none of the administrators, none of the teachers have been in a pandemic before and taught with these circumstances. It's new to everyone, and we have to take that into consideration. Then we also have really worked on making sure in the back of our minds that we remembered Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that our students have to have those physiological and safety needs and the need for belonging before they're able to learn, whether they're in face-to-face or whether they are online. And we just wanted to share that with you with this one last principle, the idea of being nimble. You've heard a lot about that, and you hear that from our governor. We hear that from Sid Dixon, and that we need to be nimble, able to move quickly and be agile in moving between schedules so that regardless, our students' needs are met. In working specifically with the elementary students, I was tasked with making sure that I had input from all of our stakeholders, and that then based on that input, we carefully made a decision of what schedule would work best moving back into school. And it's a modified schedule that we've been working on. So as far as elementary input, just so that you know, I have been meeting weekly with our elementary principals, with all of them, since the beginning of June. I think there was 1 week we didn't meet. And in addition, we've had a team of 8 administrators. You can see their names there. And they've been helping me lead this work, meeting multiple times a week, meeting with individuals. In addition to that, our administrators took the information that we have gleaned from our meetings together and went back to their faculties and to their SICs, shared it with them to get their input. And then in addition to that, we had a stakeholder group of 1 member from each elementary school, either a teacher, a classified staff member, or a parent, so that every elementary school was represented. And so far we have met twice since the beginning of June. We've looked at survey information, and then we've looked at current guidelines. We've been reading like crazy, as I know each of you have. We've watched the news, we listened to what the health department says, we've watched the guidelines come from the state. All of this input has gone into the decision we came up with for elementary schools. Wanted to just take a minute now and show you the framework that we determined was the most reasonable and appropriate for a modified elementary schedule. I do want to make the point, this would be the schedule that we would move in and out of between full red and full green. So this is the modified schedule. And the trick is we want to be able to move seamlessly between these schedules, because the facts are, we know there'll be classrooms that have to go into quarantine. We know there will probably be schools that have to be quarantined. And it's important that this just becomes part of what happens for students rather than crisis reaction, a crisis response. So looking at this is a modified framework of a split week. You have 3 cohorts of students. So cohort A goes to school on Monday and Thursday. On Tuesday and Friday, they are working digitally. Cohort B, they do digital work on Monday and Thursday, and they are in school face-to-face on Tuesday and Friday. Right here in the middle on Wednesday, we're calling this a digital support day. It's a day where teachers will be able to consult with one another, a day where teachers will be able to meet with small groups online, or perhaps even bring in small groups that need extra work, a day when teachers can do some planning, a day that really supports this work that we will be about. In addition, we heard over and over again at the elementary level that we need an option for parents who do not want to bring their students to school at all this year, for one reason or another. And we don't want to lose them to other districts, and we don't want to lose them to other online programs. And so we have spoken with Tiffany Hall, and I know she is in the process of trying to see what this may look like, but we would like to make sure that we have this as an option for parents, and whether we call this a homeschooling option or whether we call it an online option, an option where those students are not in our classrooms at all. We'll be this particular schedule, I will also want to say, and you'll know that you'll hear this as you listen to Chris and as you listen to Brian. One of the proposals that we are giving you today is that we begin in this modified schedule, that we move right into this modified schedule, that teachers have the opportunity and parents as quickly as possible to know that's where we're headed so that they can get planning, so that they can reach out for services, and so that we can get planning. One of the things we hear over and over again is we just need to know. A couple of the concerns, not concerns, but just points that went along with this schedule. Number one, health and safety of students and teachers. We are proposing a phased re-entry of small groups, whether it's 1 week or 2 weeks, where teachers can bring in groups of maybe 4 or 5 kids, make sure that they understand how to get onto the computer, make sure that they understand how to use the computers. Parents could come in. There could be some assessment that's done during that period of time. This is a 100% blended learning model. Even if we were green, even if it's a 100% green, this is blended learning, so that when students are in the classroom, the teacher walks up to the whiteboard and shows them right on Canvas, here's the assignment we're going to be working on in math today. Or here is the movie that we're going to be watching here in a minute about animals. So that they actually see that process of getting in and out of Canvas, and they learn how to use it by using it, by doing it with a principal or a teacher there helping them. And then again, on that digital support day, a day for the things that are listed here. Lunch would be in the classrooms in this model, and teachers would still have their duty-free lunch. We'd have to arrange that with paraprofessionals. And then last but certainly not least with this schedule, our team has done a lot of work. We have a lot of input, and from that we feel confident that there are about 15 key topics that we are ready to start building protocols and procedures for to build success around this schedule. We're just at that point now where we need to have that determination, know which schedule we will be using in a modified phase so that we can move forward. One other interesting note, whether we talk to our stakeholders, which were our parents and teachers, or we talk to our administrators, they all were concerned. The number one concern was health and safety and welfare of our students. I think that's so great. We were all on the same page, and we want to support one another. We understand this is a challenge, but our teachers want to meet it, and they want to meet it well. They don't want to just give a crisis response. They want to be able to head into August with their heads up high, being confident about what they're doing, and our administrators feel the same. And our parents were in support of that. So that's our elementary modified schedule. So I will pass the screen to Chris.
Thank you, Becky. I appreciate that. So I will share my screen as well. Hopefully that's clear for all of you. Since Becky talked in large part about process and how we went about this work and the norms and the expectations that were set forth, I want to jump right into the schedule conversation that we had with our middle school administrative teams, as well as the broader community, the middle school committee that consisted of parents, support staff, custodial staff, teachers, and administrators. One of the things that became abundantly clear in our conversation as a whole group was that the alignment between elementary, middle school, and high school is going to be critical for families moving into the fall. And interestingly enough, while we were working separate from one another at these three levels, the committees in large part came to an agreement about what schedule would create the best possible scenario in a worst case situation like we're in. So our schedule looks very much like the elementary schedule, where we would have students that come to school on Monday and Thursday, and half the students would come to school then on Tuesday and Friday. The Wednesday would also be a digital support day, much like Becky described for elementary. It would look very similar for middle school. It would also provide us the opportunity at the middle school level to figure out how to best support our most highly impacted students, to give them perhaps a third opportunity to be in school in any given week. And I think that that's going to be a crucial part of our work moving forward. Those kids have been highly impacted by the dismissal this spring. And granted, we were operating in very much an emergency situation, and that is not what we are going to be doing this fall. This opportunity to provide some extra support in a way that we could not do this past spring, I think is a unique opportunity in this format. So the student week, teacher week here, it's really identical. It was just an effort to show what the teacher's work week looks like, and then what a student's week might look like. The sort of unknown for us at this point, and a piece of our committee's conversation going back and forth, is the length of the school day. And I want to bring that up really quickly because it's not something I think that we have landed firmly on in terms of the hours that teachers and students will be in the building. It is a piece of, I think, our schedules, particularly at the elementary and the middle school level, that we'll still need to get some solid support behind. And then also realizing that it will be critical that as we look at the timing of the school day, that we are doing what we can to best meet the needs of families, those that choose to get their kids to school on their own, and importantly as a district, those who choose to send their students to school on school buses. So the school day recommendation in terms of that time frame is still something that we would like to spend some more time talking about the pros and cons of having a day that looks like it's 8:15 to 1:45 versus a day that may look like 8:15 to 3:15. So again, I think one of the most important things that we remember is that we're probably going to get this wrong, but we feel like this safe approach, or safest approach, that we believe we can come up with to bring students back into the building, even if it's on a limited basis, is the place to start and the place to work from. So that being said, I will turn the time over to Brian and he can talk you through the high school schedule. I can figure out how to stop sharing. There we go.
You're muted, Brian. You're muted. Try that.
Thanks, Larry. Had to go to my laptop. My desktop wasn't working, and I'm trying to find new buttons here. Yeah, thanks everybody for having us here. This first page that I'm showing you is the Cliff Notes version of some of what Michelle shared with you. It was some of what we used in our group, the high school restart group. About a third of our student population was represented in that data. I think it showed a decent representation, for example, of our special education students. 13% of those students that were shared in there were there. We hear sometimes that some areas of town are overemphasized in the survey than others, and it is true, but not maybe as skewed as some people think. 17 of our 40 schools are east of 7th East, and that's where 58% of the responses came from. We'd love for that to have been down closer to 45%, but this isn't information that has things skewed where it's 80% coming from 3 schools and 20% coming from all the others. Wanted to point that out. What Michelle also shared in number 3 is important, that most of our kids are coming back, over 90%. We thought it was very important to note that 48% of these 8,000 responses, 8,000 plus, 48% feel, quote, comfortable or very comfortable returning to a normal school schedule if Salt Lake is in green. If Salt Lake is in yellow, that number drops to 35%. We don't have a ton of people out of the 8,000 in the survey that feel comfortable or very comfortable. So wanted to point that one out. And there's also one of the most important factors to our for parents of our students. It's about really clean schools, buses, playgrounds. It's about hand sanitizing and regular hand washing. It's about limiting classroom seating to maintain social distancing and staggered recess and lunch times. And I think a lot of it is, as Catherine pointed out, and Larry has also reiterated, is science should drive our decisions on what we do. So my group, you can get an idea of, we met, let's see here, one time just with school administrators, and then I didn't write down the other times we met as school administrators. There were other times other than just that. But with this team of people, five different meetings, some were really long. Here were some of the people that were in our meetings. You can see that the middle column tells you that it was parents, parent who was a health professional. It was assistant principals, teachers, parents, front office people, central office people. So it was a range of people, and most of these people made it to the meetings most of the time. So it was a good representation. And what we settled on was what we are recommending, is shown here, and that is a schedule where students come in either group A, B, C, or D. And the reason for that and we're talking our comprehensive high schools here. We have comprehensive high schools that even if we cut our group of students in half, it isn't about the fact that there would still be about 1,400 kids at the school, 1,400 kids at the school, which is 3 times larger than a lot of our elementaries. It isn't just that, it's the number of kids that would be in each class. If any of you have spent any time at West High, at some of the classrooms at East High, and not all the classrooms, but some of them at West, you know that any sort of distancing, any sort of physical distancing gets really tough in some of those classrooms where kids are packed in. And we see here the possibility of an average of about 15 in one of those classrooms, about 15 students in a class instead of 30 in a class. 30 or more. So our proposal would be that kids for the first quarter would take 4 classes. That would be their A-day schedule. So they'd have their 4 classes, and you can see that they would be hour and a half long. There was a lot of debate in the group about should they come twice a week and meet for about 40, 45 minutes per period, or should we just have them once a week for a longer chunk of time? There was a lot of talk on that, and we thought that because of cleanup at the end of each day for each group, that would be another. We could, in case of outbreak or quarantine, there's a lot fewer kids that you're having to go with on that at any time. And also because a 10th grader is better equipped to be a self-directed or to be an independent learner than, say, a 2nd grader. The needs of a 10th or 11th grader looks different than that of a 1st or 2nd grader. The schedule would be an all day from 7:45 to 2:30. We would have those different groups, and then at the end of the first quarter, there would be the B-Day classes that the students would take. And so by the end of the first semester, they would have taken a whole semester of 8 classes. It's going to be, we thought students trying to keep track of 8 classes over the course of a semester would be more difficult than doing 4 classes really well and then switching them up at 9 weeks and doing the other 4 at that point. This is the schedule we recommend. There's additional information that we've talked about and thought about through this proposal about because another factor in this is our lunchrooms in our high schools aren't really that much bigger than our lunchrooms in our middle schools or our elementaries. But if you have half the students in there, 1,000 to 1,300 students that you're trying to fit in through lunches, we know a lot of those students take off for lunches, but we have a lot more bodies in the building, even in a bigger building and in common areas than we do with some of the smaller schools. We think that this Wednesday time could be great time for what Becky and Chris have really talked a lot about. We could also maybe fit in some more of our CTC classes if buses are available on Wednesday, if they're not running on that day for elementary and middle school as well. So we see some real possibility. And we think this intervention time, there are some students that we want back more than just once a week. We'd identify those students and say, let's give them another dose of whatever it is they need and try to get some intervention time with students as well. Back over to some of that additional information. You can read through the list. I don't need to do it for you. This was all, like I said, the collective agreement, input, recommendation, and support from that group of about 15 that after looking at data and many meetings together through the course of, or through June that we had. We had some other considerations. We still have some questions. And we had some other factors that came up that we thought the district as a whole needed to focus on. And so by no means is it something that we think we have everything worked out on it, but what Becky said really rings true. The sooner we know with what we're going with, the sooner we can start building it out. The sooner we can start looking at items that you see on this tab about mitigation tactics for schools to families during the school day. We have a lot of people. I'm not going to go through and reading it all, but you can see that people are already thinking we got to talk about everything from IEPs and parent nights to Title I assurances to all the training that we need. There's a lot of factors that need to go into it, but we need to know what schedule we're going to be using. And our recommendation as a group is that schedule be stuck with for the semester as well, because we think kids strive off being able to know what's ahead of them, know what their schedule is. Switching back and forth a ton. We don't need the educational whiplash. We don't need that social emotional piece. We need people to wrap their heads around what's coming up and what it's going to be like. And let's get in and do a great job with what I think is the game changer for us is really effective use of Canvas, and I think we have a much better chance of that this fall than we did when we had to just jump into this spring. And so we're really relying on Tiffany and her crew, and we'll do everything we can to support that so that Canvas is that platform that we can get really good at. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Brian. You want to unshare, and then we'll see if there's any. Catherine, I see you have your hand up.
Hi. So I just want to thank all 3 of our presenters and the teams that put these together. They're innovative and strong and brilliant, and I feel really good about our beginnings and I really appreciate the work that these teams did. I think really, really solid work and really happy with them. And I just want to talk a little bit about the high school plan for a second. Like I said, it's innovative and brilliant, I think, and a really strong start. I wanted to ask a couple questions. First of all, there was some discussion in the elementary and middle about how there was an all online option. My understanding is that you could do an all online option with the high school schedule too. If you wanted to, you could opt out of the A, B, C, D and just do it all online. Is that correct, Brian? You're muted, I think.
I'll unmute him.
That is correct. Yep.
Good. And then also, so the other question that I have is another question was you'd have the traditional 8-class schedule. You just have your A classes, the first quarter, B classes second quarter, A classes again third quarter, B classes again. So you're not missing any core classes or any electives. You have them all. Okay. You might not have all core and all electives, but you just have them interspersed. Okay, great. And then one other question I have is would it be possible then, we do have some extra COVID monies. So a question I have is that particularly for math, say, and foreign language type of classes, those classes really need to be more consistent. Could we have review classes, online review classes for those classes, especially for students who feel like they might need it? Could we pay teachers or teacher aides to hold occasional review classes for students who wanted those kinds of review classes during the quarters that those classes were not meeting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point and a great idea. It didn't come up in our meetings, but Tiffany, I'm thinking that with discussions with Tiffany and also I'm guessing people would be very receptive to that idea. I'm just jotting down some notes here.
Right, sure. And we do have some money scheduled for learning loss and circling back around to learning loss. And that we know that math is a target area, reading is another target area, especially for our younger students. And I also would just like to shout out to our world language teachers who have been doing tremendous work this summer to become more consistent and to really look at those best practices in world language, which, as you've appropriately identified, because the emphasis on reading, English language development, and world language development are very different than many of our other pieces. So
right. I heard the superintendent say in a different place that it would be great if we had 6 months to plan for this and we have 6 weeks. But it would be great if some of these classes might need to be double blocked. And so if we could think flexibly about maybe double blocking reading, for example. So if we could think about maybe, then it could be an A-B. And some kids might want to have reading A-B. Maybe some math classes should be A-B. Some kids may want to take language A-B. So we may want to think about that a little bit if that's a possibility. It might be good for some kids to do some things like that, but certainly we may want to pay teachers or paraprofessionals or teacher aides to do some review classes weekly or semi-weekly if they're willing to do algebra review or language review, if they will do that, so kids don't lose those skills in the off quarters. And those are the things I can think of right now. It also seems that it will be imperative for every student to have a device and have access. And so in the next 6 weeks, I think we're really going to have that up to par. And Sam looks like he's on, so I guess we'll have to have him give an update on that. But we're going to have to make sure we have every kid have that. So those are my comments, and I'll let other board members chime in. But thank you to the people who worked on these plans. They're just really smart, and I'm so happy and relieved. Thank you so much. And I really hope that board members can be involved and sit in on these committees. And you can tell us to just listen, but I'd love to be really engaged.
It's helpful to get this feedback though, because I think everything's on the table right now. And ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to have to do what starts to meet the needs of individuals. And so are some going to need to double block things? All those things are possible. And we have to be able to deal with the spectrum of things that are going to happen, where you might have people and then they might be out for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and then they might come back. And we're going to have to be able to flow with all of that stuff. Christy, I saw you had your hand up.
Thanks so much, Larry. I just want to echo what Catherine said about the work that's gone into this, and also 2 other points that she made. I am in agreement that we need to look at, we'd love to see more information around the double blocking, and then also, you know, the devices. I think that that obviously is a conversation that we'll have with Sam. I'm wondering if we could hear from Brian and Chris and Becky about a couple of things that could be answered in those pods. So first, how are we splitting up the kids in cohorts? That's, you know, probably one of the big questions that's coming across Facebook right now. How are we dealing with extracurricular? And what's the average class size that you think we're going to be looking at by doing the cohorts the way that they are? So maybe with elementary, and then to middle, and then to high, how are we splitting them up into cohorts?
Yes, so the way we have discussed splitting kids up is first starting with making sure that families are scheduled, because we want to make sure that our families are on the same day. That makes sense. So one of the things we have to do is coordinate and collaborate with Sam so that we get families in and that information in, and we get them scheduled. And from there, that's one of the things that we will have to hammer out. But we know we have to start with getting families where they need to be.
Would that be kind of looking at then in cohorts of alphabet?
Well, we've talked about the alphabet. In fact, at first we had alphabet ranges on our days, and then we took them off because that may not always work. And so that all has to be talked about, and those are some things we've got to really get in and get the nitty-gritty down for once we have the go-ahead to move forward, which is exactly why we're here.
Yeah, why you want to hear from us today.
Exactly, right. And I know, I was going to say, I know that's a lot to ask to have a thumbs up today, and if not today, the sooner the better, because every day matters in this.
Well,
right?
I know that, and I'm sure my other board members are hearing this too. Parents would really like to know by the end of this week. You know, I mean, waiting through the weekend, I understand, you know, Larry already said maybe on Monday at the very latest, you know, at least what the framework looks like so that they, you know, can help plan. So it sounds like the cohort decision is similar across the K-12 spectrum. Is that what you're looking at?
Right. And then we also have special ed and ELD.
Right.
So we've got to take some of that into consideration. That's why once we get the go ahead, then we can get some of that information down and some of those procedures down that we really need to get after.
Well, Becky, before you move on, that you just brought up one of the other questions I was going to ask, and that was that compliance issue that we have with OCR, with ELD of the 45 minutes. I mean, are we going to be able to get some lenience or a waiver? Or, I mean, have we delved into that yet?
No, so we have not delved into that, but I know that that's something that Sandra has looked at, not a waiver yet, but I know Sandra is eager to find out what this framework is so she can get working on ELD as well. And our teachers want to know. Teachers want, like I said, teachers want to do well. They want to be rock stars, and they need the time to do that. And you asked about extracurriculars. That's one of the reasons that we landed on this particular modified schedule, is that with that block, that 5.5 hour block of instruction, and we're not exactly sure how long that will be, but about 5.5 hours, they'll still be able to have at least one special class every week. So they'll still at least get maybe music or art. It just depends on the school. But we're hearing from parents, they want that. They want their kids to have that enrichment. And then you said class size. And class size for us at the elementary, it would be anywhere from 12 to 15, 16, depending on, just how many kids are in each load for a grade level.
Brian, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, I wanted to add, we want to be responsive enough, Christy, if a family has a second grader and a fourth grader and a 10th grader, if that second and fourth grader go to school on Monday, Wednesday, and they say, please don't have our 10th grader at school on Monday or Wednesday, on Tuesday or Thursday, because when our little ones are home, we need our 10th grader home as well. We want to just be able to take those and tackle those in that way as well. And so not that singletons, not that individual, not that kids don't get any priority at all, but we're going to work hard to try to make it work around families.
And Chris, I mean, are you thinking that in the middle and high that we're going to be around 20 kids per class? Is that what you're going to try and average?
I think 20 would be on the high side for most courses at the middle school level. Obviously, when you look at a class like PE or choir or something along those lines, you might have more students. And in terms of access to extracurricular, part of the reason that we looked at the schedule we did at the middle school level was to, in large part, try to maintain a normal across whatever phase we might be in. And the middle schools have most recently, and our committees have most recently been talking about having one schedule that looks the same in red as it does in this modified phase as it would if, say, we have a miracle and come January, we can all be back to school as we would like to be. So the intention then would be to have elective classes as they normally would. And that if we can provide space and opportunity and some remuneration for teachers to do that extra work, provide our extracurricular opportunities outside of that normal schedule that could meet on that Wednesday, for example, or it could be a course that a teacher is offering beyond a typical school schedule.
Thank you, Chris. And then Brian, was there anything else that?
No, I ditto what Chris says on, class size. Obviously, PE classes would have more, but spread them out on the field and have a few more there. But regular classrooms, we don't anticipate anything over 20, and that's what we'd shoot for.
What you shoot for. Thanks so much. Well, I just want to say that, and it's going to echo again what Catherine said, that consistency has been the big message that I've been getting from our parents, that if they have some sort of consistency within their family, whether they have one child or multiple children, it really will make a difference. So right down from where, Dr. Hall, you talked about the consistency of how that's being delivered, to what a school day looks like. So I just want to commend you for all of that. The one last thing, and maybe Larry, this is something that's going to come into, a wrap up for you, is just to talk about food service, and talk about how we're delivering meals for kids and what's that going to look like, knowing that we're not going to have kids there, 5 days a week, and what is that going to look like every day?
Yeah, well, just quickly on that, I did talk to Kelly, and I probably should have had him here today, but I missed on that one. But is we can send kids home with food. So we can, if they come on a Monday, we can send them home with food till the next time they come back to school. And he seemed very confident in our ability to provide kids with food.
The kids that miss on Friday, for the weekend, because we'll have a cohort of kids that'll be there on Friday and then some that won't. So would we be able to be set up again outside the schools for families to come by, or maybe that's just a future conversation that we have?
I don't know that we have that detailed yet, but I think the first thinking was that students, the last day of the week was Thursday, would take food home. And if their last day of the week was Friday, they would take it on Friday. So they could possibly do it either day. Let's see. I think, Sam, did you still have a question, Sam? And then I'll come to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, while we were talking about specials in the elementary grades and art teachers and stuff like that. And let me just stop and thank you all for all your hard work before I ask you this question, because I do appreciate it, and I've heard from several on those committees, and I appreciate your work leading them. Last spring, or it might have been in the winter, we had a report on our music teachers from Adam Eskelson, and he told us that they sometimes service many as 800 kids across you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 elementary schools. You know, and I've worked as a dance teacher in schools in Granite, so I know that, you know, you can end up in a week contacting as many as, you know, several hundred kids. Have we thought about a way to make some of that be distanced, even when there's some in-person instruction happening? I really, I mean, you know, if you're a high school teacher and you're seeing 20 times 4 kids and 4 different cohorts, that's already more than 200 kids that you're contacting over a week. But 800 kids just seems like a wildly dangerous place to be.
Tiffany, do you want to take that or do you want me to? Because I'm happy to, either way. Okay, well, I'll just jump in with what I know, Sam. I know that Adam is right on top of and has been working and will continue to work to make sure that kids get instruction. In fact, just last week we had a big meeting about making sure that students still received their specials instruction. I can't tell you about any specific plans to try to alleviate that and put some of that online, but I will tell you that in the spring they did that. And I know even from family members who participated in that with their kids, they enjoyed that. And I would hope that that would continue. I would assume that that would continue.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the right button to unmute. Thanks, Becky. I concur with what Becky has said. We are looking at a variety of different ways to make sure that we can access as much of that online if we are in a blended format. If we are back, then we are going to have to go through some of the same, you know, social distancing things. Mr. Exkelson is working on a plan with some of the areas that we know are of concern for classes like this, like making sure that we aren't sharing reads, trying to figure out ways to make sure that instruments are not shared, art supplies, certain art supplies. And so as we are kind of going through all of that, of course, in a perfect society, you know, it seems like we got a lot of CARES money, but we didn't get infinite numbers of CARES dollars. So as we look at this, we're trying to prioritize and figure out how we can make sure that we are cleaning in between effectively, cleaning equipment in, effectively, and making sure that teachers have masks and all of the different things that they need to make sure that they are able to do this. So we're looking at, depending on what schedule, you know, as SLAP has presented schedules and what the board does with schedules, then we'll fill in behind that with live or online support for those teachers. You are correct, they do see as many as 800 kids a week. And I know that that's, even if you're not in a risk category, that is a lot of kids to be around. So we're concerned about that. But it is also the same for in the high schools, our PE teachers and, you know, our music teachers there also have, you know, really significant caseloads that they're around with students. So it's, yeah, that's a concern.
Thanks, Tiffany. Chris, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to just mention something that's come up across our networks over the last few weeks. We've got building leaders out there who are so committed to not just educating the kids in their communities, but taking care of families and looking out for the physical health and the social emotional health of everyone that is involved in their school. And I truly believe that when we sit down and collectively do this thinking and this work around a really complex and novel situation, that we should ultimately land in a space that does the best to create some balance of recognizing the importance of getting kids into school and continuing their education, but at the same time being really attentive to the health and well-being of everybody in our communities. And I believe that the 3 schedules that were presented to you today do or have been the best effort to come to that balance. And I think collectively we would really encourage you as the board to help us move this work along in as quick a manner as we possibly can. I think all of you are getting the questions. We certainly are getting the questions. We just need some answers so we can move forward. And I know that all of you have those same interests at heart. So I'm looking forward to this adventure. I think we have to be in a positive space moving forward. And I think that our ongoing communication and collaboration is going to be key to making that happen. So thank you for your work. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just make one last comment on it. When you saw those schedules and you saw in-school days and digital days, I think that doesn't have to be entirely the end of the story for us. I think we can try to think creatively about how we support students on those digital days. And while they might not be in our school building, I think we need to see what resources we can garner in the community to make sure that when those kids are not in the building, that we're still moving their education forward. And there are, I don't know what the answer to that one is, but we're exploring things, we're talking to people, and we'll look at any idea that we can come up with relative to that. Catherine?
Thanks, Larry. So I was just thinking about that while we were talking, because there are people talking about extracurriculars. I think they were talking about it on the elementary school level. But I was thinking about the fact that a lot of teachers went into this and for their love of education and different things, and they have their interests. And I wondered if we could do a sort of a grant program where we let them do sort of extracurricular classes. I think we'll have a lot of mental health issues, and we'll have kids that are at home, high school kids that are at home. And I wonder if you could maybe put together a proposal for some teachers that wanted to put together maybe some extracurricular online classes for kids for memoir writing or Zumba or yoga or cooking, math classes maybe for math interests, chemistry experiments, poetry, like I said, writing, I don't know, arts, maybe some dance movements, all sorts of whatever that. I mean, I think there are administrators in our buildings that love things. I think there are probably things that photography. I think that there are lots of people that have interests that would be the kids would find fascinating. Gardening, and maybe people could put something together, and maybe they want to get paid, maybe they wouldn't, and we could offer it to our kids. I worry about kids' mental health. I think it's an issue. And I think if kids had options, we could maybe turn this into a time of self-discovery. Kids could do clubs. They could find things that they loved. Now that it's past July 1st, and I think we've got opportunities, I will pair up with Nate. We'll get our Salt Lake City COVID journal started online with the library and with the district. We'll get that going and get that going forward. But I'd love to see us do all sorts of creative things. And I wonder how other board members would feel about maybe you bringing us a proposal for that sort of extracurricular thing, so we have options for our students to explore things in an extracurricular way when other things might not be as available for them in this fall.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great idea. Michelle?
Thanks, Catherine. I was also thinking too, this is where we can utilize our higher education folks and have, because there's a lot of different departments that have outreach teams that could potentially do some really cool online stuff for students to access. And I do have a couple of questions. I want to thank the team for all the work that you've done. But I do have a couple, they're probably a little heavy loaded questions, but one of them is regarding the dual immersion schools. What are some of the plans for that? So for example, you know, I have a parent that was asking about, you know, the English Spanish dual immersion. What will that look like? You know, do they do English one day, Spanish the other day? Or who do I refer them to kind of get the answers for that? And then also, have there been conversations and contingency plans for specific areas? And I'm really thinking about both the Rose Park and Glendale zip codes where the current number of COVID cases is very high. So we're part of those hotspots. Have there been conversations about what that might look like if the numbers are continue to rise as they are now?
Yes, but are more questions than answers. Certainly an awareness and a recognition that we want to support those communities in every way that we can. But I don't have hard answers for you on that. And I don't know if there's anything from the, I know those have been conversations in those meetings that school leadership have been having too, but I don't know that we have any hard and fast answers on that right now. Yeah.
I can speak a little bit to the dual immersion. I know that one of the things, and speaking with principals with those programs in the West Network, is that they felt we really needed a commitment to a schedule. Once we did that, we could better address those specific needs at specific school levels. So dual immersion being one of them, obviously, and then looking beyond that into programs like ELP and whatnot that exist in our schools that may need a little bit different sort of structure than we currently have, but we'll certainly be able to pull those off as soon as they know what their school day might look like.
Yeah, Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you. And I will say, it's impressive. This amount of work is impressive. And there's lots of smart people that are thinking about this. It isn't lost on me how much we'll be asking of our teachers. And it's a little bit hard for me to get my mind around how we'll have kids divided into fourths, but teachers teaching all of them, and how that will look. And I maybe that's something I can kind of get up to speed on and get my mind around at another time. But it's hard for me to picture how a teacher's teaching one day and the next day, but digitally on both days as well. And maybe that's my lack of understanding of Canvas. They'll have pre-recorded lessons. I'm not sure. It just seems like double the work is what it seems like. And so I want to make sure that as a board, we're being really sensitive to that and to teachers who are in vulnerable situations, so that we're asking them to be in the building 4 or 5 days a week, where we're only asking students to be in there 2 days a week or 1 day a week, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking about that, which maybe seems contradictory to my next comment, which is I'd also really like us to be thinking about extracurricular activities, like high school activities, association activities for our athletes, and theater. I want our kids to have as normal as possible a high school experience as possible, and certainly seeing the rest of the state head toward competition. I'd hate to see Salt Lake City School District students miss out on that opportunity. So I'm hoping we can look at that pretty carefully. I know that's secondary to this educational discussion, which is very important. But I know that there are students for whom that competition is going to be really important to their high school experience as well.
Larry, Superintendent Madden, I had a question, just similar to all the other kind of segments of the teams and work and the needs of our students. But I'm just wondering if there's any presentation or somebody that could speak to special education and how we're meeting the needs of students, state federal law and guidelines. Just relative to you know, the complexity of working with families and IEPs, and just in my experience in schools, I know it's you know, it's a lot of work, and I'm just wondering how we might do that virtually or online, or safeguards we might have to do that in person.
Right, that's a great question. You know, and I did speak with Shelley, and I knew she had presented to the board, I think a few weeks ago, I'm not sure. And so I didn't ask her to come back again today. So then maybe that's my fumble, but those conversations are definitely happening. Yeah.
Oh, no fumble at all. I know we had that update, but I look forward to hearing what's kind of evolved since the last time we met. Thanks.
Absolutely. Any other questions for school leadership?
I got some questions.
Michael?
Couple questions. Now, this plan is just as if we're not in the green. Is that right? These plans?
Well, this plan right now, we are in orange in Salt Lake City, and that plan was really based around the colors when we were talking about green and yellow.
So if we go in green, these plans are going to be in effect?
If we were to, this is the plan that we would start with if we were in yellow.
Oh, but if we're in green, it's going to go back to regular?
Then in green, we would have to think about how to transition back to regular. And that's going to be tricky, though, in certain areas, like in high school in particular. You know, we're setting this up for kids to earn their credits in shorter blocks of time. And so it would make that transition possibly a little more difficult, but that's not necessarily the case that they would all have to transition at the same time or in the same way.
But then we'll have teachers in the schools all day?
We'll have teachers in the schools all day.
So I got a couple of people that was in SCCs or want to send their kids all day. What do we tell them?
Well, that's difficult, right? Because I mean, we may have instances where that's appropriate, but we're trying to start out with a plan where we can maximize the safety of everybody in the school. So we're trying to have it such that the adults are safe, the kids are safe, we can maximize social distancing and our maintenance on all of those kinds of things. And like I said, we don't have to stop exploring options for those days that we had listed as digital days, but those wouldn't necessarily be on the school campus.
I think this board needs to take a little time before Friday, if that's when we have to come up with an answer, so the parents and the teachers, everybody know, and talk about this. And I'm not sure how the process goes. I know 4 of us can't meet together, otherwise we're a quorum. But I don't know whether 3 of us at a time or whether we need to talk about it so we can have some kind of consensus. You've given us a lot of information. I got 2 pages of questions here, and I don't want to waste the time asking them right now, but I think what we're alluding to, and what the state's not alluding to, is the fact that the science teaches us different. The science teaches us, again, I'll say, children don't pass on this disease to adults. And I'm being the oldest member of this school district probably that's still dealing with kids. I mean, I would not be afraid to put on a mask and go in any classroom, even if it was full. And I'm 80 years old, and it doesn't bother me one bit. And let me just say this, I want every teacher and every staff member in this school district to understand, if you don't want to teach these kids, even if we're in green, then don't come to work. Quit, go find you another job. That's exactly the way I feel. I believe we should let them all come to school. I should believe we should teach them the way we should be, and then just whatever happens is going to happen. If we're in green, we're not supposed to be making decisions on this. It just seems to me ridiculous. We have a lot of kids that are you know, they may have medical problems and stuff. That's a different story altogether. But boy, these 3 men, 2 men and 1 woman, and a lot of others put in a lot of time on some programs that if we're in green, we're just going to be, you know, I just don't understand why we're wasting our time worrying about something that may not even happen.
Well, if it was to change, if it was to change, we can adapt to that. We understand that it's a problem that's in motion. And right now we're orange in Salt Lake City, and the trend is still up. And so that could change. I mean, maybe we're at the top, and it could it could start to change tomorrow and we could end up in a different place. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to supply our families with some sort of plan as realistically as we can for where we will be so that they can start to plan for the fall. And it's not perfect because we'd love to be able to tell them with 100% certainty, we know this is where we're going to be. But unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. So we're taking our best guess, and then we're going to work as hard as we can to provide all the resources we can to make this work for our families. Sam, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I don't think it's true that children under 10 do not spread the virus. I think there's a lot that we don't know. But I've read that recently in Oregon they've decided now that as the number of cases has grown like 5-fold in the last few weeks as people have gone back to sending their children to childcare and stuff. So I do think, we have to be frank about the fact that there are going to be cases and there may well be deaths in the schools. And there's no reason to be shy about saying that because that's the reality of where we are. That said, I think a lot of work has gone into these plans. I'm glad that we're getting them out into the public eye. And I would personally, not want to stand in the way of putting these out as kind of a skeleton or a scaffold of what we're likely going to do in the fall. But I would also say, let's not be afraid to admit the places where we really don't have an answer and just say, there are certain things that we just don't know how to do safely and we'll try, and I hear what Melissa's saying about kids that are really motivated to be at school by sports. I was a kid that was motivated to be at school by dance. I don't think I would have graduated from my school if I hadn't had a dance teacher that I was in love with. But I've tried to teach dance online. I don't know if I was successful at it at all, but I don't know that it's really safe to be teaching dance in any way that I would know how to do that. I think vocal music is a similar situation where, the science is telling us that's as to be singing around people is as dangerous or more than coughing in each other's faces. So if there are places like that where we really don't know, let's not be afraid of saying we don't know how to do this safely. And we're going to try to figure it out because we know there are kids who really need that in their lives, but we just have to tell you for now, we can't do this safely. So we're working as hard as we can, but to be frank and to be honest about those things, I think is really important.
Thanks, Sam. Catherine? Catherine, did you have your hand up?
I do.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I couldn't get to my cursor. I just wanted to add that I wanted to reemphasize what Sam's saying, that I think it's really clear that we don't know a lot about this virus and we're finding new things every day, and science is making discoveries, and that we've just recently learned that the virus passes the blood-brain barrier in ways that we didn't think it could, and that it's affecting the brain. We found out that it affects the kidneys and the liver and the heart, and now that we know that recently that it affects the brain in different ways and in ways that we didn't think it could. We've discovered that more recently in the last week and a half, and that it's really important, and that we are learning that it affects children differently. But even more important than that, our schools are filled with more than just children. They're filled with adults and with children. And I think we need to say it explicitly that though I respect all my colleagues and I respect Mr. Namelka, that Mr. Namelka does not speak for the entire school board. And I would like to say very explicitly that he does not speak for me, and that I want to say that I really do want to say that I value every teacher in this district, and that I want to say that I respect teachers and I respect their feelings if they are afraid of this virus and if they are afraid to go to work. I want teachers to know that that's legitimate and that I value that, and I see that, and I see that they have legitimate reasons for feeling afraid to be at work, because of this virus. I understand those feelings. And if there are students that feel afraid to be at school because of this virus, I think that's legitimate. And I think they should be able to be at home. And I want them to have those feelings and to feel like they can be at home if they want to be at home. And, you know, I want them to know that that's true. I personally do not believe that Salt Lake City will be in green by August. I do not think that we will be in green and that it will be an issue. But I think that everyone should be able to say that they are concerned about this virus and what we don't know about how this virus will affect us later, and those things that are called sequelae, the things that will follow on with the virus. And I want the teachers to know that we care about you, we care about what happens to you, and we appreciate what you do. So thank you so much for what you do and what you've done for our students and what you do for us, and you know what you continue to do for us. And thank you very much. That's it.
Thanks, Catherine. I asked Paul Schulte to come as well, just to give a really quick update on what we've actually been doing in the buildings. And so I'll turn it over to Paul for just a real quick update. I know we've done a ton, but Paul, will you give can I give the highlights of that real quickly?
Hello, everyone. How are you? This is the first time I got to hear of all the plans, and appreciate everybody's work. I want to kind of preface my thoughts in saying that we're prepared. I don't have any anxiety from hearing these plans that we can't meet the needs of the district and meet the needs of each classroom. So I want you all to know that relative to the building, maintaining cleanliness, providing the appropriate materials and supplies, we've been doing a great job, and I have no concerns whatsoever with the plans that we've heard. I know that we can meet the needs. Since school was let out earlier, or since we went to that soft closure, we've been supporting the buildings. Any hot spots that have come up, we've sent a team in to do deep cleaning as well as we've transitioned into the orange. There are special ed classes going on now, and we're supporting those areas as well in those classrooms with deep cleaning. Every classroom going forward, we've already made preparations for every classroom is going to have hand sanitizer. Every classroom will have their own set of disinfectant. I want to just add a real brief note that we are kind of trendsetters. We've been ahead of the curve for many years now with our custodial department on the sanitizers. We actually have generator. The foundation purchased one, and it's at West High School that we can actually generate and create our own sanitizer and disinfectant. And we also have purchased two. So we will have one at Highland and at East. And so we can provide endless supply of the sanitizer to clean the classrooms, to clean desks, clean all the touch points. We have every plexiglass in all the buildings have been put there. The teachers have all the masks. And yeah, we're just prepared, ready to go. We've been cleaning. We're way ahead of schedule on our deep cleaning for the summer that we normally do because we were able to start much earlier. Our team, since the third week of the soft closure, have been here 5 days a week and now 4 days a week with the efficiency schedule. So we've been working and been in all the buildings the entire time, which has provided us the ability to get the buildings clean and ready to go. But yeah, we're very prepared. We're ready to take on whatever comes our way. And I think you can just feel comfortable telling your constituents that we have a plan and we are on top of the cleanliness of the buildings. I want to speak to a little bit real quickly, an observation I think Catherine brought up earlier about some of the information that's coming about airborne. We are also in a position, we're going to make sure all the doors are open inside the building to facilitate decreasing touch points and facilitating the circulation of the air. I will tell you that circulating the air, some of the information that's coming out and recommendations that's included in the state office recommendations are a little bit challenging for us. And we're still trying to wrap our brains around that because most commercial or school HVAC systems are not developed to create 100% exchange of air. And so we may be looking at something as simple as turning the HVAC system off actually once it cools down a little bit, and opening windows and things of that sort. So we're looking at those. I would say of all the issues, that's the biggest one we're wrestling with a little bit, how to increase our air exchange and airflow. But yeah, those are the things that we're ready to go, and your schools are in good shape, and we have the capacity. We also have the capacity to change the hours of our custodian. We may need more custodians in the building during the day, and then bring back folks for maybe perhaps overtime hour during the evening. But we have been meeting every week, sometimes twice a week. And tomorrow we are meeting again and really nailing down every specific associated with the now adopted plan for reopening schools.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
Yeah, and we just sent personal protective equipment out to schools. I don't know if that's gone out yet, but I know there was a bunch of equipment going out to schools, and we're also getting some more stuff from the state. So I think we're in relatively good shape there.
All that material is being sent out. We have 80% of all that already in. Everything will be in place by the end of the month, before the 1st of August. Everybody will have their supplies. In addition, like Larry said, we're getting more, and we actually think we'll probably stockpile a lot of that and be prepared for any runs that we may get in October or September.
So that concludes our update. That's a lot of information. I understand. I know that's a lot coming at you all at once. We would like to put some information out to the public. I think the plans that have been presented to you today are the template that we would like to put up as a starting point. We will have to come back and look at the assurances and approve those. But based on where we are right now and where we, I think, reasonably project we might be, we feel like that's a pretty good plan.
Would you like us then, Superintendent, to move this to action to approve moving forward with these templates, understanding that there'll be changes and that nothing's final? But
yeah, I would, because then as we put this up and send it out to the public, they'll know we have the support of the board.
Okay.
It'll be, like I said before, it'll be dynamic. This won't be the last conversation we'll ever have about it. I think it'll probably be on the agenda for the foreseeable future.
So
but,
we are just talking about this for the first time today. So,
yeah.
So being sensitive to the fact that we usually don't act on something that we're seeing for the first time. Maybe the best way is to just poll the board and see how we are about giving you direction as a group to move like you've said, to start moving forward with these templates. Board members, do you want to share your thoughts on how to move forward with this so that we can give good direction following our procedures? Christy?
So Melissa, thanks for asking that question. I think that, obviously we knew that we'd be under the gun a little bit, and because, we have a framework that we know will be changing, I would feel comfortable, with moving the framework forward, knowing that there's still going to be questions that are going to be coming. But I think we need to at least let our parents know this is what we're thinking about, what the school day will look like, knowing, that the communication that will go out to them will be, and there'll be some changes, and you're right, we usually don't do this, but I think that the longer we wait, the more anxiety that's going to be building, in our communities. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Christy. So I hear you're thinking we can move the framework forward. And I feel comfortable with that as well. Sam, how do you feel?
I feel comfortable too, and I think it's kind of imperative that we put some of this information out in a way that's readable and digestible, and we'll start to hear more feedback, I think, that way. I just want to, kind of along the lines of what Catherine said, reiterate that, for teachers and janitors and paraprofessionals, everybody that's in our buildings, please feel free to communicate your fears and discomforts to any of us. And, whichever one of us you feel most comfortable talking to, whether it's, going directly to your supervisor or to the superintendent or to one of us, we will share that information with each other in a way that's appropriate and if necessary protects your privacy. We do want to hear those concerns. I know they're out there, and I'm not hearing as many as I know are out there. So I just wanted to reiterate that. But I think,
Sam, I echo that.
yeah,
Reach out, share your concerns. Let's talk about it. I've heard that from our superintendent multiple times today too. Reach out to him if you've got issues and questions and concerns. I'm hearing you're okay to move forward with some sort of with this framework and to start working with this framework in mind.
yeah.
Nate, your turn.
No, I think it's imperative that we move forward, and yeah, it's what we have to do, right? To make sure that everybody's, safe and comfortable, and but certainly echo the sentiment that, this is a real, it's new, it's unprecedented, uncertain, however you want to describe it. But if there are concerns, I would just reiterate, please reach out. I think some of my other concerns is even outside of the classroom, outside of the schools, is that we have a lot of generational households that our kiddos come from, and regardless of transmission, I still think that's a huge risk relative to what kind of exposure we could potentially be giving to the community as a whole, right? And especially vulnerable populations. So I just would want us to keep that in mind as well as we work through this, and making sure that, and I love the options that we have, some blended options, in person, online, and a combination of the two. So I would just echo that and put that out there as well.
Thanks, Nate. Catherine?
Yes, I agree that we should go ahead and get started with this. And I also reiterate what I've said earlier, which is that I would like to have Sam get started with in conjunction with Larry or whoever Larry and Sam thinks should help to make sure we have appropriate devices for all students, and appropriate internet access for all students. Whether that means we need to work on Wi-Fi or hotspots or whatever that is. I think that a lot of our students probably have phone access, so to see what they need for hotspot, things like that. The other thing I would say is that it seems to me that there is a chance that we would go back possibly in the fall, doubling up maybe with flu season, that there is a chance that we might go back to complete online. And in that situation, we might want to think about what we can do to help our teachers prepare for that. Maybe preparing for allowing them to think about what they might want to order in advance to send home with students, that they could use farther in the year, but maybe, for example, elementary school students, teachers could maybe order art supplies in advance that they might use throughout the year, but they might have ready to send home with students for packets, things like that, that we could authorize them to spend money in advance, but send home with students and things. I don't want to create extra work for teachers, but I'd love to authorize monies that they could spend earlier and then use later in the classroom if they have that opportunity. So just trying always to be a step ahead if we can. So those are the kinds of things I'd like to try to do if we can do that. So having Tiffany be ready for that, our network leaders be ready for that. I'd like us to be ready to spend that money if we can, or to do what we can to help our network leaders, to help our teachers, etc.
Thanks, Catherine. I'm hearing the same sentiment echoed. Move the framework forward, but understand there's still a lot of work to do, and with flexibility to address issues as they come up. Mike, you're up. Mike, it's yours.
I agree with the high school part of this program. I think they can handle it. But Sam, you ought to check with American Pediatrics. They'll tell you exactly what I just said. Put the kids back to work. I think I think we're making a big mistake in not starting them kids back at school. I don't care if it's red or orange. They need to go back to school. That's the way I feel. But the other two parts, no, I'm not really comfortable with them. The high school one, I'm comfortable with.
Comfortable with high school, middle school too. but not so much elementary school. You'd like to see them more than 2 days a week?
Just high school.
Just high school. Everybody else more than 2 days a week.
Yep.
That's noted. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that feedback. And Michelle.
Yeah, I agree with Christy. I mean, we are on a tight timeline, and I know a lot of feedback I've gotten from the community members is that they just want to know that there's a plan going on. And I do think, like Nate said, you know, in our communities, there are a lot of families that live together, a lot of different age groups. And there are people, even children, that have health issues. And so we really want to be mindful that we're protecting them and keeping them safe, because that's one of our big goals, right, is to educate them, but to also keep them healthy and safe. I do like this plan. And again, the communication of knowing that it could be a little bit fluid, just depending on what the state looks like. But I do agree with it.
Thanks, Michelle. So I would say, superintendent and those district leaders that are here, you're hearing that there's board support for moving this framework forward. I would say thank you, and I know that the board would support me in just a real generous vote of thanks for the work that you've put in. I think there's some brilliance really about starting cautiously and seeing where we can move from there. So thank you for this conversation. Thank you for engaging with us. It's been great to have you here and to have this conversation and sharing of ideas. Really appreciate that, and really appreciate the willingness you have to engage. This is not easy work. I understand that. I think we as a board really value your expertise, and we're gonna love to be a part of this conversation as we move forward. And again, echo what everybody has said as far as please reach out to us if there's things that you need from us to support you. We want to hear it through our superintendent. And thank you. So keep this conversation
Melissa.
going forward.
Thank you, Melissa, and everybody else on the board. We really appreciate your support going forward.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yes,
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for spending your afternoon with us. Superintendent, shall we move to the website changes with Sam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello.
Hi, Sam.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. See, I'm sharing my screen here real quick. All right, so just to kind of, hopefully this won't be too long, but kind of seems trivial with everything else going on, but our website is one of our main communication points. So about a year ago, we started going down the road of outsourcing our web development. We were finding that we couldn't keep up with the demand in-house. And so we went out to RFP and found a company, Final Site. They won the bid. They're the same company that does Davis's website as well as Ogden School District website. Initially, our plans were just to try and migrate what we had over, because really what we were trying to do was to reduce the burden on our developers so we could work on other projects, as well as provide schools and departments opportunities to have quicker access to customized websites. That was really what was holding us up. We were getting a lot of demands for customized websites. So when we met with Final Site and told them we just kind of want to migrate everything over, they returned with a different model, as you can see, because it didn't quite format properly into their content management system. So that's where we wanted to kind of give you a quick preview. Now these are just mock-ups based upon the style guides of things that that we gave them based upon our previous conversations when we reviewed the website the last time. So as you can see here, this is the district website. Again, the black around it will be gone, but this will just kind of move into the whole page. The look and feel of it is a lot more clean. It's not less clunky, and just flows into the different information that we have. Okay, it still has all of the features of our current website. We did add a couple of links up at the top for families and students that we don't have on our website. That's been one of our biggest requests. It's been a single point of entry. If I'm a student or I'm a parent, where do I go? And we want them to have one click from the district website to go to information. So if teaching and learning needs to put information about learning resources and they're a parent, it's all on the parents page or the guardians page. If they're a student, everything's tailored to the student. And then we've also asked them to mock up what the school websites will look like. And so they did a mock-up of an elementary, a middle, and a high school. You can see here's a kind of a mock-up of what Backman would look like. There's not a whole lot below it, but this would be the beginning page. Again, the black around it would be gone, so fill up the entire page. Still has many of our consistent menu structure that we have, because we really want that to be consistent across all of our schools. So when a parent has students in multiple schools, they can navigate the menu structure for each one. And then here's an example of Clayton. And then Holland. And that would look at that. So each one, again, same look and feel. We're going to be able to increase our productivity with this. We actually were able just to redistribute some funds that we have to pay for this, and it's definitely, it's cost, it's less than half the cost of an FTE. So we are coming out on the top of this process. Any questions?
Thanks, Sam. If you'll stop your screen sharing, then we can see board members a little easier. Questions for Sam? No, thank you for this work. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was just gonna say it looks great, and I have long thought that we should do this, so I'm glad that it was happening without my knowledge. I had one question, which is, we have that little tab that allows you to change the language.
Yes.
I wondered do we have any data? I mean, I'm just curious about this. It's not an urgent thing, obviously, but I'm wondering if we have data about how that's used and if that could be used in any way to just give us more information about how people who speak languages other than English and Spanish are served in the district.
Yes, we can look at our analytics that we have plugged into that and see if we can get that information.
Thank you.
That'd be interesting to hear, wouldn't it? Thanks for that. Do I see your hand, Christy? No? Okay. There you go, Catherine. Go ahead.
Say thanks to Sam, and to say that the Backman's page looks like the University of Utah page, and I was impressed that they've become a university. That Heather Newell is doing a really great job with them, clearly.
It'll be great to see this roll out. And I love the family and student single point of entry. I've heard that too. So thanks for being responsive to that. Thank you.
And one thing I've read, the timeline is probably to roll this out is probably October. We'll be looking at finishing the design as well as doing some training with schools and after school students.
Okay. How will information be uploaded to the school sites? Will there be a person who's doing that at each school site?
Yes. Yeah, we'll follow the same model. Usually the library technology teacher is the one that does that. There are other individuals, principals have access as well, but each school will have a number of people that can put information on the site.
Okay.
We'll still automatically populate staff and things like that from our own internal systems.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Superintendent, did you have something you'd like to comment about this?
I did not. I think it looks great.
Well done. Thanks, Sam.
All right. Thank you.
And thanks for all your work getting us up and running on this platform and how we've been meeting like this. So thank you for your support and for all the support of students with laptops. And I know it's been a giant effort this spring. Appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Right, next up is a budget update from our business administrator, Alan Kersley. Alan, are you still here? There you are.
Here I am. So let me share you this budget update. So since you passed the budget for the 2021 year, first part of June, the legislature met again at their 5th special session, and the effect of their decisions there, they increased the WPU, or weighted pupil unit, by $64, which equates to 1.8%. For the district, that amounts to an additional $1.44 million from state funding. The flexible allocation, which is used just to support the general education of the district, was 100%. Our funding for the 1920 year in that program was $260,500, so that funding was cut altogether. In addition, they also cut 100% the math and science opportunities for students and teachers with the acronym MOST. It used to be known as USTAR. Our last year's amount for that was $329,200, so that is also 100% gone for the 2021 year. They also cut 100% any funding we receive for foreign exchange students. The district doesn't receive a ton of money for that. You can see we last year had $21,000 of state funds for foreign exchange students. In addition, we have received some federal monies for COVID response from the federal programs. The first allocation was from the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, ESSER, but also better known as CARES funds. The district's allocation for that was $4.4 million. Those funds are available to be spent from anywhere from March 13th of 2020 through September 30th of 2022. And more recently, we were allocated an additional $1.2 million from the governor's emergency education relief funds. And those have the same spending time frame as the CARES money. So that is a quick and brief budgetary update. If anybody has any questions.
Go ahead, Christy, sorry.
It's okay. I wasn't sure when that screen shares up. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Alan, thank you so much. So I have 2 questions for you. When we see the cuts, in some of these areas that you've shown, is there a plan to put money back into that? Or are we just now saying, nope, we can't, be able to provide the math and science opportunities for students and teachers, funding, since it's 100% gone, the 329,000. So is that just a further conversation with the board, or is that program now eliminated along with the others?
Yeah, so we have not had further conversations on what to do with that program. Like you said, whether it's cut or do we find other resources to plug the hole for a year and see what happens. So those need to be further conversations to have.
So what would be helpful to me is, as we look at that, any of those cuts, let's, an evaluation of has that program or that money that's being used, is it essential? Is it something that's just been sitting there and rolling over? I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Get some more information about how that's going to affect that program in some way. So that would help me, and I know my other colleagues, as we go, talking about, those specific cuts. The other thing, and I have just been looking really quickly online, I can't find exactly, but I know with other conversations that Catherine and I and Sam had heard at the legislature about the early intervention funds, that there was money that was put into the early intervention fund. Do you have any, I don't see that on your list, and so I wasn't sure if that was something that you just need to look into and provide more information.
And the first report they sent out, because there's some federal funds and some state funds.
Right.
We got an email this last week saying they still are waiting for guidance from the feds on how to allocate those funds. So they are not giving us a dollar amount on that one yet.
So they're not putting that out yet. So that's just a little bit of money. Can you remind us what that is going to be used for? Is it earmarked for something specific or that we've used it for?
I mean, it is coming from COVID relief programs. So it'll be to address any issues related with the early childhood.
So that with early childhood is what you said? Okay. Obviously early intervention. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Alan about this report?
So my understanding is the most funding was mostly used to to pay for productivity periods, right, for high school math and science teachers. So we'll just need to figure out once we know what that's all going to look like with the schedule this year, where the holes are,
right,
if there are any.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Any other questions? Okay. Do we want to have a discussion about budget? About anything specific to this? We're good? Okay. Thanks for sharing with us, Alan, and I think that's a good update. There was a time we were talking about 2, 5, or 10% cuts. So this is better news than we were prepared for. I guess in some ways, being prepped for the worst makes this good news. It's not what we were hoping for, but it's better than we were expecting at this point. Okay, thanks, Alan. I appreciate that. Moving on to number 4. Sorry, I didn't feel like I'd been talking too much, but somehow I've lost my voice in the process of being on this meeting since 10. So I've got a cough drop in my mouth. I'm sorry. The next item is the superintendent search with a draft timeline and an RFP. I'm going to let Nate talk about this. I mean, my hope and expectation is, as you've all had a chance to look at the RFP, which is not substantially different than we've been looking at since March, is to get some guidance on moving forward with an RFP that would help us determine a search firm to help us through this process. And I would like guidance from the board if you support going through an RFP, this RFP, and the timeline, so that we're all on the same page as we move forward. So I'm going to turn the time to Nate and let him lead this discussion, as he's done a lot of thinking and a lot of preparation on this, for which I am really grateful. He's been very thoughtful about this. So Nate, go ahead. Will you kind of lead this discussion?
Yes, certainly. And thanks, Melissa. And thank you for the trust and confidence, and just for the context, for my board colleagues, and preparing for our retreat, and of course, to some feedback, of course, from board members as well about the significance of this. I was really grateful to, one, just kind of garner my own experience and also work really closely with Moselle and Tyler on this too. So this wasn't anything that was done in the dark, but really something that was supported in a team effort for us moving forward, so that we would have the best materials, so that we can, have a discussion about how we want to move forward. So the specific thing that you'll see first, and I'm just trying to pull up my stuff. Sorry, I have so many tabs open right now. Getting out of the budget report. The first piece that we have here is our draft timeline. And so what we really wanted to do was make sure best that we could, just map out our process moving forward, and also highlight the significant amount of detail and work that goes into a process like this. knowing that it's a national search. At least that was some of the sentiment that, I felt like I heard relative to how we navigate, interim 2-year contracted superintendent over the last number of months. So what we've done is really plugged into our meeting schedule as best we can. And again, this is a draft, so it's all open for discussion as best we can. Just the processes and tasks that we really need to be on top of and be ready to make decisions about relative to the discussions that we're having. So in so it's really, a map out from July until we actually make an appointment in the ratification of a contract for a 2-year contracted superintendent. So there's a lot of tasks in here relative to that, and a lot of kind of loose ends that we need to tie up moving forward. But I really wanted to give us a framework so that there's some structure and there's a process and a plan moving forward that we can agree to and start bringing in these agenda items into our upcoming meetings. I think that would be really helpful for Larry and Alan and Melissa and I as we move forward through the end of the year. To make sure that we're on top of this and that we have some expectations for our discussions moving forward. So I would certainly open it up to any thoughts or questions, concerns, suggestions, where we're at with that.
Thanks, Sam. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to the 4 of you, and it sounds like Tyler was working on this as well. I thought it looked good. There were a couple little tiny grammatical things that I can send you an email about, but in general, I thought it looked perfect. So I would support getting this out as quickly as we can for obvious reasons. The question then just becomes, how do we want to structure the committee for the RFP?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think something that we could discuss either today or at a later time. I do want to note that we have board schedule right after this RFP and timeline discussion. So please keep that in mind. If we want to sit with this a little bit longer, that we may have to schedule an additional meeting at the end of the month to make sure that we get this out, and also to sensitivity relative to process as well. But very good point, and thank you for the feedback, Sam.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Christy.
Hey, thanks, Nate. This looks, I can see that there's been a lot of effort between you and Moselle and Tyler. It's always good to have a timeline that you can work from. I have a couple of things that, I can't put my words into a sentence right this minute. I think that obviously the first thing is putting together that RFP committee. And, I'm going to just make a suggestion right off the bat for us to consider, that with you, Melissa, and Sam being on the negotiation team, that myself and Catherine, and then depending on, whether Michelle or Mike want to serve on that committee, to be on the committee for the RFP. My question really to all of us is, why is this sense of urgency, happening, at this right now, where we feel like we've got to get it done, like by the end of the year and then do a contract by January. For me personally, I feel like, I want us to take the time. We don't know what the fall is going to look like. I know that you said it's a draft, absolutely. So I think that's what's so great, is that, we can look at what's happening in our community, because, obviously we all felt really strongly about the ones that went through this before, how important those community meetings were. And so at this point, obviously we can't have big, massive meetings, with people coming, but to gather that input, I think, just to take our time and look at that. My one concern, and it certainly is not anything towards Sam or Michelle, But I do think that the new board members that are going to be coming in, we'll have 2 new board members, starting in November. And I think that they should be a part of this, process than we're allowing them. Because right now it looks like, you're just saying that second, after the election, that they would then possibly be invited in. I know that by law, and maybe we could have Patrick weigh in on this, that we become a lame duck board, and so we can't appoint a superintendent. And I think that it's, for me, I would like those new board members to be more involved after the first of the year. And so would just suggest that we just push that forward a little bit, to allow those two new board members, to have more of a part of the choosing of the superintendent, since they will be the ones that will be, working with them. Otherwise, I think that the framework that you've put together with everyone is a good framework for us to look at. I like the flexibility that it has, and that it has hit on the points that we have felt were important, which was that community outreach. Well, first finding a consultant who could help us walk through, some of those issues, looking at what the community outreach would look like, then opening up. I mean, I like how that flows. I would just like to push it past the first of the year so that those new board members would be able to have more of a part in selecting that new superintendent.
Thanks for that feedback, Christy. Can I speak to that for just a quick minute? I feel like the urgency you're feeling is about getting the RFP out and the consultant hired. It would be a 1-year contract. I think the more work we have on the front end, the better. I would look at how the RFP dates align with this draft. It does push things back a little bit in terms of appointment, but not in terms of, I would kind of hope we kind of open it this way, where we maybe get that consultant, the RFP out soon, or, approve that today and get a consultant hired by September, which is in this timeline that Nate's put together. But then it puts the appointment, the final decision on the superintendent at the end of February instead of the end of January. But it gives us some flexibility to look at when best practices, when candidates are out there, and use the consultant more kind of at the beginning of that process to make sure we're following the right timeline for the market as it is now. Does that make sense?
What you're saying, Melissa, makes perfect sense to me. I think that's what we had talked about before. Our previous conversations was to find that consultant to help us walk through some of those pieces, which might take us a little bit longer. So that's, again, I know that it's the flexibility, but I'm glad to hear you say, to push it further into early spring, to be looking at that. But I agree with you. The RFP to go out for the consultant.
That's where you're hearing the urgency.
In September, let's get school open first, and and then we can do the other part.
Well, and as we move to the rest of this conversation, keep that in mind, right? Get school open first piece is important.
Yep.
I would say, I think an RFP committee that consists of Christy, Catherine, and Michelle, or Mike, if you're interested, a group of the 4 of you, I think I support that. I think that's great. It's those 5 meetings that you need to attend, and everybody needs to be in attendance. It could be, as you've heard, maybe narrowed to 3 meetings. I want to look at that. I want everybody to have that timeline that's in the RFP in their minds, because once the RFP goes out, those are the dates. So we need direction on that. But if everybody's feeling comfortable with the way the RFP is, I would like to get that put out sooner rather than later. We do have a discussion about adding a meeting in July coming up. And so maybe this will kind of blend into that conversation a little bit. But talking to Superintendent Madden and Nate and I and Alan, I think we need to strongly we have to have a meeting in July, another meeting in July, because we are going to need to approve those assurances that we've been talking about in our previous discussion. And so I would like to keep that meeting brief and to the point of those assurances, but we can also certainly send out the RFP or vote on an RFP to move it on that day. So that could be our first day where we issue the RFP, and then have the consultant, I think the timeline now has the consultant ready to start working with us in the end of October. And perhaps we can move that to the end of September and then keep that end date or move it to early spring for when we would appoint. Does that make sense? Does those dates then kind of correspond with what I'm hearing from the board? And Mike, I don't see you, but I hear you. Are you wanting to say something?
No, I'm good. I agree with Christy.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'd just like to dovetail a little bit, and I think you just said it perfectly, Melissa, that, you know, we want to be competitive, right, with other school districts around the country or even here locally, right, and how we do this search. And I think the timeline is flexible. I think the dates that you really see in there, just for y'all's consideration, is that we would really want that search firm to be able to commit to that time frame, right? And it says in the RFP specifically, as mutually agreed upon. So we're really looking for a search firm that can, one, meet these expectations and also has the experience in doing this kind of work based on the criteria that we've provided. So I appreciate the feedback on that, Christy, very much.
Sam, go ahead.
I think we could, I hear what everyone's saying about the timeline in both directions, but I just feel like the RFP itself is ready. So maybe we approve that today and then have a discussion about committee composition at our meeting that we're about to schedule in the next agenda item. Should we vote to move this to action?
Yeah, that would be great with me, that we would approve the RFP. I want to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. We have seen it at a couple previous meetings, so this isn't the first review of it. But I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with that.
Go ahead, Nate, sorry.
Melissa, I'm sorry. Do we have it attached to our agenda?
Yeah, an RFP is not something that we can have attached.
That's what I didn't think so. I thought, well, wait a second, Yeah.
It's on our agenda as something we can approve. Yeah. We can approve to move forward with it, but it isn't something that's public, right? Okay, so we can vote that we want to do an RFP and that we're ready to send it out.
Okay, but would we be able to review it in our next meeting before we send it out?
So you've seen it. You should have.
Right, but we need to change dates, right? I'm a little confused. I'm sorry, Nate. Just walk us through that.
Certainly. So, and I do want to just provide the context of some of the changes that I felt like were significant in the RFP. Obviously, the dates are there, and just for y'all's information, and I'm sure y'all saw it, but Superintendent Madden emailed out the RFP to us. Would have been last week, I think, sometime. It's pretty comparable to what we reviewed in previous meetings earlier this year. I think the significant changes is it boosts up board participation along with the search for firm and committee, our commitment to a more public and open process. Certainly, I've heard us all say that, and certainly there's an expectation from the community relative to that. And I think there's more language in there about search firms that are skilled or have experience in hiring the appropriate candidate for diverse school communities in cities or school communities, however you want to frame that. I think those are probably the most significant pieces of change to it. But otherwise, I felt like it was pretty comparable to what we reviewed in the past. But the dates in there are flexible and highlighted. More along the lines, as I mentioned earlier, just as expectations, that we would really want that firm to say, yep, I can meet that expectation unless we decide to change that up at a later time through appropriate process.
I can see that now, Nate. I've pulled it up and
Okay.
I can see where it's highlighted. So I'm sorry, I'd forgotten that Larry had
Oh,
said
no, it's
that.
okay.
But yeah, so that's why I was saying, I mean, we've looked at it. What my suggestion would be is that we start the timeline July, at our July meeting, just we publish it, or publish it starting sooner, and just move those timelines up so that it's not October 21st or the end of October before we announce the contract for the search firm. And then if we can decide, and maybe we should do that today, that we have an RFP committee of Christy, Catherine, and Michelle, if you're willing, Michelle, that we then, you set those meetings. Those meetings no longer need to be tied to board meeting dates. They were, because we were wondering if the whole board was going to be the committee. And I think it's better if it's not. And so you could set those dates with the expectation that the sooner that we want the contract announced sort of the end of September instead of the end of October. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Melissa and Catherine, please jump in, because last time when we went through this, it did take we thought that it wouldn't take us as long, but scheduling and looking through and reading through did take us a little bit longer. And so I would say, even if we have, I like that it says estimate on there, so that even if we end up it being sooner, then that would be great. But giving us a little bit of a buffer, might also be helpful too. Not that we would say, oh, we're going to wait until the end of October.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Catherine?
Yeah, I thought it went quite quickly last time. And
After we got
and to be honest, I'm just sitting around at home.
I love the suggestion, and I'll be honest, I'll support whatever the board decides, of course. But I'll be honest, I've kind of quite really liked this process and working with certain folks. So I have a couple of questions. One, I would love to be engaged with the RFP committee, especially knowing that negotiations will start to taper off a little bit more. So I'll have that extra free time. But again, that's a board decision. But I do feel like I have some agency with this process so far, and I've really enjoyed the process. But I'm not committed or sold to it, right? So if the board wants to move that direction, I would support that. I think the other piece is with Larry's help, just identifying who from the district office could support the RFP committee forward. I mean, it's obvious to me, it probably folks like Moselle and Tyler potentially, but I would be intrigued to hear what Larry might think about that. And if no answer today, would love to chat about that at a later time.
Okay, do we want to discuss the RFP committee then? I hear, Nate, that you would like to be a part of it. I hear Christy and Catherine would like to be a part of it. Michelle, I'd love to see you be a part of it if you're interested. So we need to discuss that. Go ahead, Michelle. No? Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna say that if Nate wanted to take my place, that's totally fine. I would give it up to him, because I'm assuming we can only have up to 3 board members.
Right.
Yeah, I think if Nate wants to be a part of the process, I'm all for him being a part of it.
That's great.
Well, I think the question is, Michelle, if you really want to do it, I'm very happy with that too, because I do have to also recognize my capacity and not I don't have the same liberties that other folks on our board do with my full-time online Zoom meeting job. So, so I would certainly defer to that. If you really want to take it on, I could always use one less thing on the plate, so to speak.
I'll be honest, I just got a new title at work, and that's going to add a lot more to my plate. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
We can have a party for you. Good job. Okay, well, Nate's put in some really good work on this. I support him being a part of this. What I'd say to you then is to look at that timeline and see if you want to change the dates on that before it's published. But if somebody's willing to move to action, that we have a RFP that was ready, we're going to use, then let's do that.
I will make that motion. So I move that we move the RFP, the request for proposal for the search for a consultant to our action agenda.
Second.
Second. All right. Christy, I didn't hear the second. Was that you, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. So everybody good with moving that to action? Michelle?
Yep. Michelle Tweetspo, yes.
Mike, yes.
Yes.
Catherine Kennedy, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Samuel Hansen, yes.
Melissa Ford, yes.
Christy Sweat, yes.
Okay. Well done. Thank you, guys. That.
Melissa, can we walk around for a couple minutes? I'm just starting to yawn. It's that time.
Okay.
Can we just take a 5-minute break?
So let's do that. When we come back, we will be talking about the discussion agenda items for next year and planning for next year. So let's actually make it a 10-minute break. It's 3:50 right now. Let's come back at 4 for that discussion. Fair? Okay, we'll see you in 10.
Oh.